Chapter 761. You're here. The old ancestor stood in front of the portrait and seemed to sigh as he spoke. That's right, the old ancestor said with a sigh. I'm here. Chu Yang knew that there was no need to reply, but at this moment, he felt a little uncomfortable under the oppressive atmosphere in the room. So he spoke to break the silence. Because when the old ancestor spoke, even his voice was one with the atmosphere. If Chu Yang did not speak, he would be silent here. And Chu Yang dared to bet that as long as he did not speak, this old ancestor would be silent again. The old ancestor nodded and fell into deep thought again. Suddenly he asked brainlessly, Do you know who this person in the portrait is? Who is the person in the portrait? Chu Yang was suspicious. He thought to himself, is it not the Chu clan's ancestor? Why do I have to guess? But what was the meaning of the ancestor's question? After thinking for a while, Chu Yang said carefully, The person in the portrait is the heart. The person in the portrait is the heart. The old ancestor seemed to unconsciously repeat this sentence. Suddenly, he turned back and looked deeply at Chu Yang. He said sadly, The person in the portrait is the heart. This sentence makes a lot of sense. Chu Yang said indifferently, Yes, I'm painting a person of my heart. It's also a person I can't forget. Even if thousands of years have passed. Even if the beauty back then has already become an old woman. I can't forget her. I often meet her in my dreams. She's still in her budding years. She's still as charming as before. Even if the years have passed. Even if the bones have turned to ashes. But the freshness of the memory has condensed thousands of years into a portrait of the heart. It will never fade. Chu Yang sighed softly. I don't know who the person in the portrait is, but I know that this portrait is the heart. From the moment Chu Yang started to speak, the elder ancestor slowly turned around and looked at him quietly. The divine light in his eyes changed. In the end, he seemed to be a little moist. Those eyes that had dried up for hundreds of years actually seemed to be tearing up again. Hundreds of years of worries, hundreds of years of longing and sadness, were all stirred up by Chu Yang's words. He listened attentively and tilted his head back. She fiercely held back the tears that were about to flow out. A cloud of mist rose from the corner of his eyes. The room fell silent again. After a long while, the old ancestor said softly, It seems that you have experienced a lot in the outside world these years. Chu Yang's words had stirred up his worries, but his words had evoked the joys and sorrows of Chu Yang's two lives. Chu Yang heaved a deep sigh and said, I'm all alone and helpless. I'm like a lonely shadow drifting around the world. I don't see my home. The days of rootless duckweed, it's a long story. The old ancestor nodded gently. You've also experienced many life and death situations? Yang admitted frankly. And you once had a lover who would never leave you? The grand ancestor asked again. Yes. The elder ancestor did not speak. After a long time he sighed softly. No wonder. Then, he turned around and no longer stood in front of the portrait. He sat down on a chair and faced Chu Yang. He sized him up carefully and finally said, You're not bad. Chu Yang stood still and did not say anything. Your injury is in your spirit. But it's not that your spirit is damaged. Instead, your spirit is overflowing and has affected your meridians. The old ancestor looked at him and said softly, This is not an injury but a blessing. As long as it can be digested, all the disadvantages will disappear immediately. And you will have a strong spirit from now on. The other book friends are reading. It seems that you've obtained some unknown inheritance and fortuitous encounter. You're not injured. The old ancestor lowered his eyelids and said, Is that right? Yes. Chu Yang was surprised. He did not expect the old ancestor's eyes to be so sharp. He could see the crux of his problem at a glance. This time, I came out of seclusion to treat your injury. But although you don't need treatment now, I'm not disappointed. The old ancestor's eyes flashed with satisfaction. To be able to see such a talent in the Chu clan, I've gained a lot from my seclusion this time. It's a great relief. Chu Yang smiled slightly. You think too highly of me, old ancestor. The latest chapter of the Saint Hall. You're not worthy of my praise. The old ancestor snorted and said, It's been 510 years since Chu Tsonghuan's descendant. Finally, another talent has appeared. Chu Tsunghuan? Chu Yang remembered that he had seen this name on the memorial tablet when he was worshipping the ancestors. He was the first-generation ancestor of the Chu clan. I only hope that you won't be as arrogant and unyielding as Chu Tsunghuan. It's the best thing that you can understand. The old ancestor sighed. Old ancestor, please guide me. Chu Yang bowed and said, Sit. The old ancestor smiled slightly. Chu Yang looked around and could not help but wonder. Where should I sit? I can't sit on the floor anyway. Chu Yang frowned and suddenly smiled freely. He sat cross-legged on the floor just like that. The old ancestor's eyes were smiling. He picked up the teapot from the table, opened the drawer and took out a wooden box. Chu Yang glanced at it and was shocked. This wooden box was dotted with stars, as if the whole universe was shining on it. This was actually starwood. Legend had it that even a little powder was thousands of times more valuable than purple crystals. Starwood was recognized as the #1 treasure in the heavens continent. It would take 1,000 years to grow an inch, but not 10,000 years. This was starwood. It would take 1,000 years to grow an inch, but not 10,000 years. If one wanted to use it, they would need starwood that was hundreds of thousands of years old and above. And other than not rotting after 10,000 years, the biggest specialty of starwood was that it was magical. This was because a container made of starwood could be used as a spatial container. It could contain everything. Furthermore, the older the starwood, the more things it could contain. Even the powder of starwood, if it fell into the hands of a supreme martial artist, could be refined with the supreme martial artist's swallowing rivers and mountains technique. So the preciousness of starwood could be imagined. After so many years, starwood had long disappeared from the heavens continent. He did not expect to find such a big wooden box here. And it was actually used as a tea box. This box was half the size of a head. Its preciousness was really rare in the heavens continent. As if sensing Chu Yang's surprise, the elder master smiled indifferently. You're quite knowledgeable. But don't think that I'm rich. In fact, my most precious thing now is this box. Chu Yang laughed. When the wooden box was opened, a burst of tea fragrance rushed out. The elder master took out a small pinch and placed it in the teapot. Then he waved his hands, and a gust of wind blew outside. But looking carefully, even the grass did not move. The elder master waved his hand, and a strong spiritual energy of heaven and earth flew in from the room. It condensed in the room, and then turned into a ball of clear water. Fine and silent, it poured into the teapot. Then, the teapot in the elder master's hand emitted a faint steam, and slowly boiled. And that refreshing tea fragrance also became stronger and stronger. The elder master's face was very calm, and he was concentrating on doing all this. But Chu Yang looked at his face through the rising steam, and at this moment, he actually felt a little illusory, as if there was some distant sadness. Only then did he notice that although there was no bench here, and only one teapot, there were 5 teacups. This tea is from 700 years ago. The elder master lowered his eyelids and looked at the tea in the teapot, which had turned from dry to tender green. His eyes were full of love as he said, In order to preserve this tea, I got this heavenly starwood box. For this wooden box, I killed 17 people from the Ling clan, and also caused the Chu clan to be content with their territory. Chu Yang secretly clicked his tongue. For a wooden box, he killed 17 people from the Ling clan, one of the dominant clans, and was still alive. It seemed that this elder master was also a lawless person in the past. Don't think that I'm very powerful. It's just that at that time, the dominant clans signed an agreement with the law enforcement officers, and all the supreme martial artists and 7th grade martial saints, and above rushed to the law enforcement hall. And at that time, I had a chance to take advantage of it. The elder master laughed. Chu Yang curled his lips and thought, You dared to steal from the Ling clan, and the Ling clan didn't retaliate against you. Instead, they let you live until now, and didn't take back the item. This proves a lot. What's the use of being modest? This tea was left behind by this elder master of yours. The reason why I stole this box was to store this tea. I thought that if I didn't succeed, I would die there. But I didn't expect it to succeed. The elder master played down the story, and didn't go into detail about the process. Chu Yang sighed. He knew what this meant. His beloved wife was dead, and he had nothing to live for. Therefore, he wanted to steal this box to preserve what his beloved wife had left behind. If he didn't succeed, he would follow her. What kind of deep love was this? The elder master's eyes were full of memories as he smiled indulgently. At that time, her family had a tea garden. When I first met her, it was at the tea garden. She was picking tea leaves, and her white robes fluttered with golden hoops. The fragrance of the tea lingered in the air, and the elder master's face was heavy. At that time, I asked her if the tea was fragrant or her. She said. At this point, he suddenly woke up and laughed. I'm old. I'm so annoying when I'm old. I was very touched when I heard that. Chu Yang laughed. Then, in order to preserve these tea leaves, you caused the Chu clan to be in such a state. Do you regret it? The elder master shook his head and sighed. What's there to regret when my heart is at peace? Chu Yang laughed. The elder master lifted the teapot and poured the tea into the teacups. The tea was green, and its fragrance filled the air. He seemed to have forgotten, and he seemed to be absent-minded. He actually filled all 5 teacups to the brim. Then he took a teacup for himself. After hesitating for a long time, he picked a teacup and handed it to Chu Yang. I used to have 3 brothers, and they often drank tea here. Every time, my wife would sit beside me and personally brew tea for us. The teacup you're using now is my second brother's. The elder master looked at the teacup with some reluctance. There's a small chip on the teacup, and my second brother used his fingernails to remove it. Now he's gone, but the teacup is still here. With the teacup, it's like my beloved wife and them are still here. Chapter 762. The old man said softly as he looked at the book with a gentle gaze. At this moment, there was actually a feeling of being in high spirits. The other book friends were reading as well. It was as if at this moment, those long-lost brothers had gathered here again. They were chatting and laughing, calling each other elder brother and sister-in-law. They were having a joyous gathering. The way he looked at Chu Yang was as if he was looking at another person. Chu Yang knew that the old man was not looking at him at all, but his second brother. Chu Yang listened quietly. Suddenly, a sour feeling rose in his heart. If one day, Mo Qing Wu left, Gu Du Xing, GMO and the rest also left one after another, and he was the only one left in the world, would he be like this old man? The years were long, and he had to spend alone. Lonely and cold. Only the long time and the memories that were engraved in his heart would accompany him? If that was the case, how could he endure it? 10 years before your ancestor passed away, she had personally brewed 3,000 caddies of tea for me in the tea garden. She knew that I was not used to drinking tea that was brewed and picked by others. So she personally brewed it for me. The old man chuckled and said, her last request was, if I am going to die, I must finish drinking this tea before I die. I am only allowed to drink 1 cup of tea a day. If I die before I finish, she will not care about me in the underworld. The old man pointed at the teacup in Chu Yang's hand. I have already drunk a pot of tea today. Since you came, I brewed another pot. So tomorrow, I will not drink anymore. If I drink too much, she will be angry. With a smile, he pointed at the wall behind him. She is watching. Chu Yang's throat moved a little. He looked at the tea in front of him quietly. He suddenly felt that this tea was love. He could not bear to drink it. He didn't know why the old ancestor had called him here. Right now, he only wanted to be a qualified listener, to read a good novel. He wanted to be a witness and be influenced by this love and brotherhood that would never change in life and death, that would always be new even after thousands of years. The two of them were silent. Time passed just like that. Why are you not drinking? The old man asked after a long time. Tea is like love. I can't bear to drink it. Chu Yang raised his head and said softly. Tea like love must be drunk. The old man looked at him solemnly. If you don't drink it now, it's not because you can't bear it, but because you're cruel. This is blasphemy. Yes. Chu Yang's whole body trembled as he came to a realization. Tea is like life. The old man calmly said. When it's time to drink, we must drink. Don't wait for the tea to turn cold. If you drink it again, it won't have the same taste. At that time, there will only be regret. He looked deeply into Chu Yang's eyes and asked, do you understand? Chu Yong pondered for a long time, and a trace of enlightenment appeared in his eyes. I understand. He suddenly realized that the old man was using this cup of tea to impart to him the truth of life, the comprehension of the heavenly Tao, and the realm of martial arts. However, in order to assimilate into this realm, one had to enter the story and experience it personally. Then at the last moment, he used this sudden and unexpected method to shout at the top of his head, to let him have an epiphany, as if he had become a Buddha. Chu Yong couldn't help but feel respect and admiration. The old man didn't use a high level of cultivation. Everything was like a small bridge in flowing water. When the conditions were right, success would come naturally. He inadvertently led Chu Yong into an epiphany. It was effortless. This kind of realm and technique was miraculous. Seeing that Chu Yong understood, the old man's eyes were filled with gratification. Chu Yong picked up the teacup and slowly drank a mouthful of tea. The tea was still warm, and it tasted great. Chu Yong only felt a clear stream of fragrance flowing from his throat into his throat and into his stomach. Everywhere it passed, there was a smoothness. He couldn't help but praise sincerely. Good tea. Ancestor is indeed worthy of being called the tea sage. The old man instantly became happy, and even a little proud. He said, "Your ancestor is called the tea sage." His voice was filled with self-satisfaction. It was as if a person praising his wife's tea was already the highest achievement in his life. He was extremely proud. "It's worthy of its name," Chu Yong said sincerely. "If ancestor is willing, I would like to." "Don't even mention it," the old man said discontentedly. "You wish." Although he was discontented, he couldn't hide his pride anymore. "What a pity." Chu Yong sighed. The old man laughed and said, "I asked you to come today because firstly you're young. Secondly, your cultivation is still passable. Thirdly, you're a blessed person. Fourthly, I like you. Fifthly, I'll fulfill your wish this time." Chu Yong said, "Oh, you're young, but you're already a first-stage martial emperor. If you subdue the power of the divine spirit that's troubling you, your cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds." The old man narrowed his eyes and said, "There might not even be one in hundreds of thousands of years. Even if there is, their intelligence will be destroyed by the huge divine spirit, and they'll become stupid. How can such an ancient divine spirit be passed down, until now be ordinary? But you've withstood it. Once it's digested, your divine spirit will be number one in the universe. If this isn't great fortune, then what is?" the old man said. Chu Yong smiled bitterly in his heart. "If you know how much I've suffered for this, you won't think that this is fortune. You're young, not even 10 years old, and a first-stage martial emperor. The other readers are reading. Of course, it's nothing if you're only a first-stage martial emperor at 10 years old. Your brother Chu Tinghu is already a third-stage martial emperor, and he's even younger than you," the old man said. "However, he's been raised in a greenhouse and hasn't seen much wind and rain. Although he's scheming, he only uses it on his own people. He's not a hero. But you've become a martial emperor in the lower three heavens, barehanded single-handedly, and without anyone to rely on. This shows that you're smart, intelligent, and calm. In this aspect, the other juniors of the Chu clan will never be able to catch up to him." His tone was full of disdain. Chu Yong smiled and remained silent. It seemed that whatever he said wouldn't be appropriate. But the old man didn't let him go. He narrowed his eyes and looked at him, asking softly, "King of Hell Chu, Minister Chu, Pavilion Master Chu, what I said is it?" Chu Yong almost jumped up. The old man pointed out his 3 identities in one sentence. King of Hell Chu was his nickname, Minister Chu was his official position in the lower 3 heavens, and Pavilion Master Chu was his heavenly armament pavilion master in the lower 3 heavens. How did he know these things? Besides Chu Feiling and Chu Fian, who knew half of these things, the others, including Chu Xiongqing, didn't know. And Chu Feiling and Chu Fian would never confront each other face to face. The old man narrowed his eyes and smiled. "I've heard what you said to Chu Fian. You should know that in this house, I can hear whatever I want to hear. There's no hindrance. And you've just returned. But you're the person I'm most interested in." Chu Yong was surprised. The old man continued, "I've also heard some of what you said to your father." Chu Yong was stunned. The old man laughed. I've seen you in the northern wastelands of the lower three heavens before. And I've also met Elder Ning once. He smiled. You should also understand now. When I killed the Ling clan's people and stole their things, the person who protected me was Ning Tianya, Elder Ning. Chu Yang suddenly understood. So that's how it is. When I was in the northern wastelands, there were countless experts, and I didn't meet many of them. It turns out that this elder was also there at that time. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, thinking, fortunately, you only called me King of Hell Chu, Minister Chu, and Pavilion Master Chu, and didn't call me Sword Master Chu. Otherwise, I'd really be shocked to the point of fainting. The old man looked at him quietly. You don't have to worry that I'll reveal anything for you. If you want to keep a low profile, if you want to endure silently, if you want to accumulate strength, that's your business. But since I know about you, I know that the future of the Chu clan is on you. Chu Yang blushed with shame. Elder, you're exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. The old man smiled coldly. So when it's time for you to kill the Chu clan's people, don't be soft-hearted. Chu Yang was shocked, and he suddenly raised his head, only to meet the old man's penetrating eyes. Remember, the old man said solemnly, the clan is your backing, but more often than not, the clan is a hindrance. If you can't forge the clan into a solid block of iron, then don't rely on the clan for anything. Don't tell the clan any secrets. That will be the beginning of your failure. Do you understand? Although the old man was talking about the Chu clan, his words were cold and murderous. I understand, but Chu Yang's face showed that he was struggling. No buts. The old man cut him off. Some people can't accomplish anything, but they're good at spoiling things. What's wrong with killing them? He said coldly. Maybe you're worried that after you kill them, your parents will be sad, and your grandfather will be sad. But let me tell you, if you don't want them to be sad, then you'll have to sacrifice the future of the Chu clan, your own life, and even the lives of your entire family. Chu Yang shivered. I understand. When you leave here, I'll give you something. Then, you can give it to Chu Xiongqing, and he'll understand what I mean. The old man closed his eyes slightly. Yang Dao suddenly remembered something and asked, May I ask, old ancestor, how many years has it been since your ancestral mother? 703 years, the old man said softly. May I ask what elder ancestor's cultivation level was 703 years ago? Chu Yang asked. When I was young, I had a fortuitous encounter and ate a golden ginseng. The old man smiled. 703 years ago, I was already at the peak of 4th stage martial saint. Chu Yang was shocked. Then you, the old man smiled and said, you want to ask about my current cultivation level? Haha, I'm now at the peak of 5th stage martial saint. Chu Yang was silent. What he wanted to ask was, why did you only break through one stage after so many years? Now that he had said this, he didn't hide anymore and asked directly. The old man's face was full of disappointment. If I wanted to break through, I would have broken through to Supreme Martial Artist. I can't go up to 3rd stage Supreme Martial Artist, but 2nd stage Supreme Martial Artist is stable. But I tried my best to suppress my cultivation and not break through. Even this breakthrough was to extend my lifespan, so that I could finish the task of drinking 1,500 kilograms of tea. I had no other choice. If I break through again, I'm afraid I won't have any tea to drink in the future. But now, I'm actually going to break through the bottleneck that I've suppressed for 450 years. It's really distressing. Chu Yang was shocked and sorrowful. He finally came to his senses. Could it be that you're cultivating the path of sentiment? Chapter 763. Chu Yang stood up in shock. At this moment, he actually lost his composure. His eyes were wide open as he stared at this elder. His heart was in turmoil. The sword spirit in Chu Yang's consciousness couldn't help but shudder. He opened his eyes and looked at this elder of the Chu clan through Chu Yang's body. His eyes were full of surprise. Even he didn't expect this elder of the Chu clan to actually cultivate the heaven-defying path of emotions. The current Chu Yang still didn't really understand what the real path of emotions was, and how difficult it was to cultivate it. But the sword spirit had experienced the ups and downs of the human world for 10,000 years. He knew very well that the path of emotions was harder than ascending to heaven to cultivate it. But this elder of the Chu clan cultivated the path of emotions, and actually broke through all the way to the peak of 5th grade martial saint. Moreover, he was still desperately suppressing his cultivation. Otherwise, he would have already reached 2nd grade supreme martial artist. He had been here for 703 years. From what he said, his wife's cultivation didn't seem to be high. That meant that he was at most 1,000 years old. Then, how did he cultivate to such a level in such a short period of time? The path of emotions was filled with inner demons at every step. The path of emotions. The elder raised his head. His expression was full of disappointment. Chu Yang could clearly see the wind and clouds changing on his face at this moment. It was as if thousands of years had turned into white clouds and light mist, quietly flowing past his face. At this moment, his thin face was full of longing, no regrets and deep feelings. The only thing that wasn't there was sadness and despair. Chu Yang looked at him in a daze. At this moment, there was a sudden illusion in front of his eyes. It wasn't clouds or fog. What he saw was the passage of time. Life, old age, sickness, death, the vicissitudes of life. Vaguely, Chu Yang seemed to see him meeting his wife in the tea garden. At that time he was young and handsome. His beauty was alluring, gentle and affectionate. He was surrounded by green grass and green tea garden. The breeze blew gently, and the white clouds were intoxicating. Just by looking at each other, their hearts fell. It was love at first sight. From then on, their feelings were deeply rooted, and they never left each other. From then on, they depended on each other in life and death, helping each other in times of need. It was as if he could see him reuniting with his brothers. From then on, he would ride his horse and roam the pugilistic world, repaying his debts of gratitude and vengeance as he rebuked the world. When they were happy, even if they had to travel to the ends of the earth, they would travel day and night to get drunk together, just to share their joy with their brothers. When they were in danger, they would be the king's shield, pushing left and right to persuade. But none of them would leave, sharing life and death together. When they were in pain, the brothers shed tears together. If he was happy, he would laugh. He would laugh at the changes in the world. If he was angry, he would go berserk. He would battle the world, and dye the Jianghu red with blood. He would kill until the heavens and earth were turned upside down. He would stir up tsunamis and landslides. Because with you and him by my side, I am fearless. It was as if he had seen the death of his beloved wife. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. His brothers had come to accompany him, grieving together. It was as if he could see his brothers growing old one by his side, closing their eyes one by his side. They went from vigorous and lively to silent, and in the end, they turned into a pile of dirt. His heart was torn apart again and again. Faintly, it was as if a few tombs full of green grass had appeared in front of him. The sun was setting in the west, and it was silent between heaven and earth. In front of the tombs, an old man in green stood for a long time, looking sentimental and melancholic. Chu Yang's eyes were moist. At this moment, he suddenly felt the same way. The sorrow and melancholy in his heart could not be suppressed. Pa in the silence, the sound of teardrops falling to the ground could be heard softly. It was so clear and so shocking. Chu Yang suddenly woke up. Only then did he realize that his face was already covered in tears. His tears were dripping to the ground, making soft sounds. He looked across and saw that the old man was still sitting quietly. His eyes were filled with infinite wisdom and depth, looking at him. Chu Yang wanted to speak, but he only felt a lump in his throat. He could not say a single word. He wanted to stop his tears, but no matter what he said, he could not stop them. The sorrow in his heart became more and more intense. For a moment, sorrow came from his heart and could not be cut off. After a long time, Chu Yang finally calmed down a little. He rubbed his eyes embarrassedly. He did not understand why he would cry in such an embarrassing manner here. Ever since Mo Qingwu died in front of him in his previous life, Chu Yang was in extreme pain and cried bitterly. At his last moment, when he thought of Mo Qingwu, other than crying, Chu Yang did not know how many things he had experienced since his rebirth. But he had never cried like this. But at this moment, Chu Yang felt that he was crying like a baby. "You're awake," the old man's voice came. He was clearly in front of him. but his voice seemed to have crossed thousands of mountains and rivers. It came from the clouds and mist. It was so ethereal that it seemed to be full of illusions. Yes. Chu Yang lowered his head. I'm a little ashamed. I actually felt the same way just now and cried in embarrassment. Cried in embarrassment? The old man smiled. I used 1,000 years of cultivation to create an illusion of the vicissitudes of life. I condensed 1,000 years into this moment, turned the past into the present, and brought you into my world. I let you see the joys and sorrows of my life, the joys and sorrows of my life, the loneliness and heroism of my life, the love and infatuation of my life, he said slowly. You're actually crying because you're embarrassed? Chu Yang raised his head in shock and looked at the old man in disbelief. Elder. For a moment, it was like an illusion and also real. Could it be that what I saw just now was actually real? Was it actually an illusion created by the ancestor with his all-powerful divine power? So that he could put himself in it? So that the real past could be seen again? The old man nodded gently, but clearly confirmed Chu Yang's guess. You've cried. Do you feel better? The old man looked at him quietly. Ever since Mo Qing Wu's death in his previous life, Chu Yang had always felt suffocated in his chest. He could not vent it out. Even in this life, it was still the same. His heart was heavy, and there was no way to relieve it. In addition, in this life, he had too many secrets that he could not tell others. After suppressing them in his heart for a long time, it became heavier and heavier. But at this moment, after hearing this sentence, he suddenly realized that the heavy and suffocating feeling in his chest had unknowingly dissipated by more than half. Chu Yang could not help but wonder. What was going on? Tears are good things. Crying is even better. The old man looked at him with some affection. Child, you have too many things on your mind. You've suppressed yourself. This time, you've shed tears to your heart's content. You've vented a lot of your pressure. Chu Yang lowered his head and pondered. Could crying reduce the pressure? Why do people cry? It's to relieve their emotions. When you don't cry when you cry, you'll suppress it in your heart. You think that things have passed, but they haven't. The more you accumulate, the stronger the backlash in the end. The old man said, when I was young, I always thought that men shed tears but not blood. Shedding tears is the behavior of a coward. So, even if you stab yourself with a knife and let the pain replace your tears, you're not willing to let your tears flow and maintain the image of a tough man. Actually, this is the stupidest thing. Because although these will not erupt at the time, when you're old, human nature will make you nostalgic. And at that time, as you grow older, you'll become more and more nostalgic. The things that you've been suppressing in your heart will come one after another. It will become the most painful torture for you. In terms of martial arts, it's the demon of the heart. The old man said, and this demon of the heart can't be controlled. So the cultivation of a martial artist stops here. So the lifespan of an ordinary person stops here. Chu Yang seemed to understand something. He murmured, I see. So in a person's life, he needs to indulge himself. When he's proud, he needs to laugh wildly. When he's heartbroken, he shouldn't be stingy with his tears. When he should cry, he should cry. When he should laugh, he should laugh. That's living a truly free and easy life. The old man looked at him with a smile. Chu Yang, actually, the image of a so-called tough man that you deliberately maintain is not worth much. It's too worthless. A real tough man is one who swallows rivers and mountains and dominates the world. He's sincere and genuine. That's the tough man of the martial world. Yes. Chu Yang was sincerely convinced. He said, I'll remember it. Chu Yang pondered. Regarding his past and future, he carefully sorted out the many things that he had done in the past. Now that he thought about it, his pretentiousness back then were really somewhat childish and laughable. It was a common problem of young people. When Chu Yang raised his head, his eyes were already clear and bright. The old man smiled with gratification. The old man didn't know that his illusionary past this time, the evolution of the world and his teachings, had changed Chu Yang's attitude towards life completely. Chu Yang sat where he was respectfully, waiting for him to speak. This was the first time that his arrogant heart of 2 lifetimes was so impressed by someone. The old man smiled slightly and said, Chu Yang, you may not know my name, My name is Chu Xiaoxin. He laughed. Xiaoxin, a homonym for be careful. My brothers used to joke with me and would always shout to each other, be careful, it's coming. He recalled and laughed. Chuyang laughed too. At this moment, he suddenly thought of Gu Duxing. When GMO and Luo Kadi were joking and fighting, they would always tease each other. Take care of your little brother, old Gu. And at that time, Gu Duxing would always fly into a rage, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. When I was 20 years old, I left home for the first time and wandered the martial world. It was at that 1,000 acres of tea garden that I saw her. He laughed, and his eyes actually seemed to still have the amazement of the past. He said contentedly, that's your great-grandmother. Chuyang smiled knowingly. He could imagine his happiness and contentment at that time. At the same time, he also sensitively noticed that the elder ancestor finally started to talk about his cultivation of the path of emotions, after giving him a heads-up, transforming his life, and clearing his inner demons. All the mysteries must be in the story that he was telling. So Chuyang relaxed all his mind and focused all his attention on integrating himself into the story. At this moment, the old man's sharp eyes shot out. Chuyang was startled. He felt that although this gaze was sharp like a sword, it was also full of warm power, and a kind of wonderful consciousness, as well as a kind of mysterious attraction. Under the help and attraction of this gaze, Chuyang actually felt that he seemed to have transformed into Chu Xiaoxin and entered that place of time and space 1,000 years ago. But the wonderful thing was that his mind still remained clear. The path of emotions. Chapter 764. She was just the daughter of the owner of a tea plantation. Although her life was very rich, it could not be compared to our Chu clan. Moreover, she wasn't from a martial arts family. She was just a very, very ordinary woman. So at that time, my father flew into a rage and forced me to cut off all contact with her. He even arranged a marriage for me. The old man smiled proudly. At that time, I was the first successor of the clan. But at that time, I only said one sentence. If you dare, I will die. My father was so angry that he left. Then, I lowered my status and gave my position to my second brother. Seeing that I was so resolute, my father could only accept it. The old man smiled calmly. Chuyang clicked his tongue. Although he said it calmly now, Chuyang could completely imagine how shocking it was at that time. Then I was immersed in happiness. Other than practicing martial arts, I was with him. Occasionally, I would bring him out to the pugilistic world to relax. Then we became brothers. We searched for treasures together, fought together, and laughed proudly in the pugilistic world. From youth to old age, the old man smiled calmly. So my cultivation improved day by day. No matter what I did, my heart was always calm. I did not have the time to be heartless. I also did not have the opportunity to cultivate the heartless way. The old man smiled faintly, but it was only a long time later that I realized that my cultivation method had already deviated from traditional martial arts. Or rather, it was already the opposite of all martial arts. So for 15 years my cultivation did not improve at all. I was always vexed. Should I change? The old man smiled and reminisced. It was at that time that I met Ning Tianya for the first time. At that time, I did not know his identity. I only thought that he was an old man. When he saw me sitting on the mountain peak, he asked me what was the matter. At that time, I had no one to talk to and thought that he was just an ordinary old man. So I told him everything. The old man chuckled. After Ning Tianya heard everything, he said, "Did you kill those who should be killed?" At that time I said, "Why didn't I kill those who should be killed?" He said, "Since you can kill, are you heartless or sentimental?" I said, "If we don't kill bad people, are we going to keep them around to harm good people?" He laughed and said, "This is the path of sentiment." Chuyang was immersed in this. When he heard these words, he suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. A long time after he left, I still couldn't react. It wasn't until 3 years later that I understood that there was no such thing as the path of emotion or path of heartlessness in this world. It all depends on why you cultivate, why you kill, and whether your heart is at peace, happy, or ruthless after killing. The so-called path of ruthlessness is to kill for the sake of killing. If there is a disagreement, you will draw your saber. In this way, as time goes by, you will naturally train your heart to be as cold as ice. Everything is considered from the perspective of life and death. Everything is based on strength, and the strong will be respected. Over time, he became arrogant and egotistical. Everything he does is based on himself, and he has lost his sense of self. 35,888. The sentient path will also kill and plunder, but their motives are different. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I have no qualms about killing them. In this way, they are both egotistical, but this egotistical includes many things. So from here we started to differentiate between the sentient path and the heartless path. Once they are separated, there will be differences. The arrogance, egotistical and bloodthirsty of the heartless path is the inner demon. But this has a great advantage, which is to cut off all attachments and only care about walking towards the peak. So the cultivation of the heartless path is faster. But there is a limit. Although I don't know where this limit is with my current cultivation, I can feel that such a heartless path will definitely not develop endlessly in the future, because it doesn't conform to the heavenly Tao. And the reason why no one has been able to reach the peak of the sentient path is because sentient path needs to have an eternal spiritual sustenance in the depths of one's emotions. Some people lose it halfway, or break down, or have their true feelings worn away by time. They forget about the past and stop for life. The old man smiled proudly. The reason why they can't cultivate the sentient path is that they don't love deeply enough. They don't love deeply enough. So once a partner dies, they can still recall it for a short time. But after a long time, they will forget. Time and forgetfulness are the most terrifying things in the world. And since you cultivate the sentient path but forget your own feelings, how can you reach the peak? Chu Yang suddenly came to a realization. He was on the path of sentiment, yet he had forgotten his past. After my wife left, I always thought that she was still accompanying me. Her teacup, her tea, her breath, her gaze are all the same as before. The latest chapter of the Holy Hall. So when I live here, you may feel sad and feel that I live in pain, but I am enjoying myself. Because no one comes to disturb us. I have a peaceful mind and don't pay attention to cultivation, but my cultivation naturally improves by leaps and bounds. The old man sighed tiredly and said, "This is my sentient path. My sentient path is because of deep love. But the sentient path that you cultivate is your own sentient path." Chu Yang had left the cottage for a long time, but he had been wandering alone in this desolate forest outside the courtyard for a long time. What the old man had said was his sentient path. And it was very vague, causing Chu Yang to be unable to see clearly in that illusory realm. He couldn't understand it at all. He seemed to have realized something, but also didn't. It was hazy, and he could see clearly, but he couldn't feel it. Sentient path. Heartless path. Chu Yang stepped on the dried grass under his feet, deep in thought. The sky darkened and night fell. The moon rose in the east and set in the west. The sun rose, and the world was bright, and so on. When Chu Yang finally felt tired, he had already stayed in this forest for 3 days. When he fell, he only felt numbness and pain in his legs, as if they were about to break off from his body. It turned out that he had been deep in thought for the past 3 days and 3 nights, unconsciously walking in circles in this forest, and his footsteps never stopped for a moment. He really didn't know how many thousands of miles he had walked in these 3 days and 3 nights, and he couldn't use his cultivation now, and was equivalent to an ordinary person. It would be strange if he didn't feel pain. Although he sat down, he was still thinking. Suddenly he said, "Sword Spirit, do you understand?" The Sword Spirit smiled. "You need to comprehend this realm yourself. If I tell you, your sentient path will be ruined. I can't comprehend it for now." Chu Yang shook his head. "I've thought a lot, but I feel that it's too troublesome. It's not my sentient path." He let out a long breath. "I finally understand what the old ancestor said. Without reaching a certain realm, one can't differentiate between sentient path and heartless path. The current me may not have reached that realm yet." The Sword Spirit didn't speak. Chu Yang smiled and said, "This can't be forced. Maybe when the time is right, success will come naturally. Now I'd better follow my heart and walk on." True feelings are the true self. I can't change my true feelings for anyone or for any reason. That's it. In the future I'll comprehend it. But I also have to remember the old ancestors' words. I can't suppress myself in the future. Haha. I'm a real hero who laughs and cries, a real man who loves and cries. How can I, Chu Yang, be locked down by myself? As he spoke, he seemed to have completely let go. His body relaxed as he fell backwards onto the dried ground. He groaned and said, "That really hurt. I'm so tired." The sword spirit smiled bitterly. "You're still in the dark. How dare you say that you haven't comprehended anything? After experiencing Chu Xiaoxin's life and witnessing his path of sentiments, you can still maintain your true self. This is the beginning of your path of sentiments. You've already stepped one foot into it, but you say that you don't know anything. And I can't suppress myself in the future. Haha. I'm a real hero who laughs and cries, a real man who loves and cries. How can I, Chu Yang, be locked down by myself? If you can really do this, you'll have already let go of the shackles on your true self. After getting the essence of your sentient path, you actually still want to comprehend it in the future? I really don't know what you'll comprehend in the future." But the sword spirit didn't say anything. This kind of muddle-headed cultivation was actually a very good thing for Chu Yang. When he finally understood this layer of truth, there would definitely be a new breakthrough that would allow him to be reborn. The sword spirit was looking forward to seeing what kind of enlightenment King of Hell Chu would have when the time came. Even though he had always been smart. Or, it would be unexpected again. In the thatched cottage, the elder standing in front of the portrait suddenly smiled. Then, as if he was relieved, he sat on the chair and brewed a new pot of tea. He still filled the 5 teacups completely. He smiled and said softly, "Little tea brothers, please. Try my skills and see if there's any improvement." The beautiful eyes of the portrait on the wall were deeply focused. A breeze blew, and the portrait moved slightly. The clothes of the person in the portrait fluttered, as if she pitied the loneliness of the man below, and was about to step down. Chu Xiongqing and Chu Feiling stood quietly outside the forest, looking at Chu Yang. The two of them had been standing here for 3 days and 3 nights. Their faces were full of hardships. Since Chu Yang started to comprehend, the two of them had been standing here without moving. They were worried, but they were also afraid of disturbing him. Further away, under a tree, Yang Rulin was hiding behind it. She stood quietly and secretly looked at her son from afar. Her eyes were full of heartache. She didn't dare to go forward, because a mother's heart could easily erode a hero's spirit. If her son knew that his mother was by his side, his heart wouldn't be so firm. He would feel that he had someone to rely on. So, Yang Rulin could only watch secretly. Seeing that Chu Yang finally stood up and walked towards his father and grandfather, Yang Rulin bit her chin and hurriedly left. She couldn't let her son know that she had been here. It would affect his martial arts heart. "Let's go back." Chu Feiling looked at his son, and Chu Xiongqing looked at his grandson. They said this in unison, but didn't mention anything else. "Okay." Chu Yang's heart warmed. When Chu Xiongqing received the small wooden sword from Chu Yang, Chu Xiongqing's mouth was as wide as a hippopotamus, and he didn't close it for a long time. He looked at Chu Yang in shock, and didn't say anything for a long time. The Chu clan has a killing order. If one day it passes from someone's hand to your hand, that person will have the power to decide the life and death of all the members of the Chu clan. This is the ancestral order. Remember, it can be anyone. In his memory, the elder said this coldly. Chu Xiongqing only felt that his head was in a mess. "Clan master, there are 2 law enforcement officers from the law enforcement hall requesting to see you. They want to ask you some questions." At this moment a warrior came to report. Chu Xiongqing frowned. Chu Yang was also shocked. Could it be that the matter has been exposed? Chapter 765. Chu Xiongqing suddenly turned around and looked at Chu Yang. The two of them looked at each other silently. They must be here because of what happened that night. After all, the appearance of a divine doctor like you is too coincidental. Old Master Chu frowned and said, "And this matter was done by the enforcers. The clan can't interfere. You have to depend on yourself." "I know." Chu Yang said lightly. They can't blame me for something that I didn't do. Grandpa, don't worry. Old Master Chu sighed. Can't you blame me for something that I didn't do? You're too naive, aren't you? You can kill someone based on a suspicion, let alone such a big matter. To the enforcers, what's the big deal if they wrongly kill half a person? Go. Be careful. Old Master Chu sighed. His expression was gloomy. Don't tell my mother about this first, Chu Yang said. I'm afraid she already knows. Chu Xiongqing smiled bitterly. The enforcers never hide their actions. Since he came to the Chu clan so brazenly, how can your mother not know? Chu Yang's face darkened and he said heavily, Damn the enforcers. Following the two enforcers out of the gate of the Chu clan, Chu Yang couldn't help but turn back. His mother was right behind him. She almost couldn't stand. Her face was pale, and she was swaying as if she was going to fall. She was only standing there with the help of his father. Chu Yang stood upright and said seriously, Mother, I'll be back. His words were resolute and decisive, and they were filled with convincing power. Yang Ruolan's nerves, which were on the verge of collapse, seemed to have gotten a little support after hearing this sentence. She gazed deeply and said softly, I'll wait for you to come back. Chu Yang nodded, turned around resolutely and strode away. At the gate of the Chu clan, Chu Tinghu and the other brothers revealed a trace of joy in their eyes. Chu Xiongqing's face was full of worry. Chu Feiling's face was solemn, and his temples were throbbing faintly. The two enforcers, one on the left and one on the right, accompanied Chu Yang. Their backpacks were filled with purple crystals that Chu Xiongqing had stuffed into their backpacks. Master Chu gave a heavy gift. Please take care of your grandson, second law enforcers. Xiao, you still want to go back? The two enforcers clearly snorted at Chu Yang's words. How many people can come out unscathed after entering the law hall? Those who uphold the second law cannot be unreasonable. On the contrary, although the Hall of Justice has a terrible reputation, it's the only place in the Chongtian continent that talks about right and wrong. Chu Yang said lightly, If I didn't make a mistake and didn't violate the heavenly laws, why can't I come back? It's not up to you to decide whether or not you've made a mistake. It's up to us, the Hall of Law Enforcers, to decide. The Hall of Law Enforcer on the left said lightly, Of course. Chu Yang's voice was also very indifferent. As he walked forward, he turned a corner, and the Chu clan behind him was already out of sight. On this street, a person was walking with big strides. Suddenly, this person let out a sound of surprise. Then he stopped in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang? Why is it you? Where are you going? Chu Yang looked at him fixedly and said indifferently, Don't you know where I'm going? My second uncle? This person was Chu Feilong, who had been missing for 4 days. To think that he would suddenly appear here at this moment. But his appearance confirmed the worries that Chu Yang had in his heart. Therefore, Chu Yang didn't hold back when he spoke. When Chu Feilong heard this, he seemed to be startled. Then he looked up at the two people beside Chu Yang. His pupils contracted. May I ask the two Hall of Law Enforcers, what crime has my nephew committed? The two Hall of Law Enforcers looked at Chu Feilong and said, Chu Feilong, we still have to decide what crime your nephew has committed. Chu Feilong was startled. Then, he took a step back and said, May the Hall of Law Enforcers impartially enforce the second law, and give my nephew justice. My nephew has just returned home. He doesn't know much about the upper three heavens. If he has offended you, please forgive him. The Hall of Law Enforcers smiled insincerely and said, Chu Feilong, you talk too much. Chu Feilong stepped aside and said to Chu Yang, Yang, don't worry. I'll go back home to take a look at the situation. Then, I'll go to the Hall of Law Enforcers to pick you up. Chu Yang said lightly, Thank you, second uncle. The three of them walked past Chu Feilong. Chu Feilong seemed to be in a daze for a while. Then he suddenly stood up and rushed back to his clan. Thought. The sword spirit said. It seems to be Chu Feilong's doing. Chu Yang sneered. Definitely. Chu Yang was thinking. Chu Yang finally understood what Chu Feilong had been doing these days when he had disappeared. Chu Yang reckoned that Chu Feilong had been investigating this matter ever since it had happened. And that night, Chu Yang had immediately started the treatment, and Chu Feilong had disappeared at that time. He must have gone to the Hall of Law Enforcers. Then this matter was undoubtedly done by him. Chu Yang's only suspicion was, it's unreasonable for Chu Feilong to appear here now. Is it just to say something that doesn't hurt me? It's obviously impossible. With Chu Feilong's scheming mind, it's obviously impossible for him to do something so childish as to gloat over Chu Yang's misfortune. Then, the only possibility is that there's some information in the few words that he said just now. But Chu Yang didn't discover anything even after analyzing each sentence. Everything was said in a very ordinary manner. This made Chu Yang very uncomfortable. It was as if all the Hall of Law Enforcers in the world were as gloomy and heavy as this one. All the furnishings were dark and gloomy, giving people a feeling of oppression. It was as if they were in the legendary hell, which was full of gloom and terror. It made people tremble with fear the moment they entered this place. The two iron plate enforcers brought Chu Yang to this place, and then retreated. There were two people inside. Chu Yang looked over, and saw a person sitting on a chair. His face was a little pale, and his left shoulder was hanging limply. He was motionless. The other person was a bald old man. His white beard fluttered in the wind. His eyes were as fierce and cruel as the vultures in the desert. Both of them were looking at Chu Yang. They were closely watching Chu Yang's movements. Chu Yang stood 10 feet in front of them, and looked at them innocently. Heroes indeed come from the young. The bald old man laughed wildly like an owl and said, I didn't expect young Master Chu to be such a great divine doctor at such a young age. Sorry for the disrespect. Chu Yang looked at him with some fear and said hesitantly, This elder, this called me here. I don't know. He seemed to be so scared that he couldn't continue. What are you afraid of? The bald old man looked at Chu Yang and stared at him intently. A quiet aura also locked onto Chu Yang's whole body, including his heartbeat, pulse, sweat pores, eyes. Even the contraction of his pores and other minute situations were all under the observation of this bald old man. The sword spirit quietly began to respond. Sweat rolled down Chu Yang's face. He said somewhat incoherently, How can I not be afraid? This is the Hall of Law Enforcers. The moment I came in, I felt afraid, he said intermittently. His pulse, eyes, and heartbeat were also constantly changing according to his fear. His heart was beating like a drum. He was a coward who suddenly became an archduke from the grassroots. But he could not avoid the inferiority complex in his bones, as well as some pride that he forced himself to feel. You don't have any cultivation? The bald old man frowned. After this observation, he found that the other party didn't have any Xian cultivation. This was strange. Could it be that this young master of the Chu clan was just an ordinary person? No, I have, Chu Yang said loudly. He seemed to be full of resentment. Then he lowered his head dejectedly. It's a pity that it was crippled. With a swoosh, this bald old man had already reached Chu Yang's side and grabbed his wrist. Chu Yang's body seemed to subconsciously retreat. He tried to dodge, but he didn't. His face showed pain and annoyance. In the eyes of these two great experts, it was, I could have dodged, but my cultivation was crippled, and I couldn't. It was such a desolate look. The bald old man snorted and said, You can't dodge my technique as long as you're not at the monarch level or above. You're so young. Could it be that you were at the monarch level before you were crippled? This sentence was obviously mocking. But then, his expression became serious and he said, You were indeed crippled. The person who crippled you was very clever and overbearing. The sword spirit had quietly blocked Chu Yang's dantian and meridians. Cooperate with his investigation. Do you know who crippled you? The bald old man asked with burning eyes. At the same time, he looked at Qin Baoshan and nodded slightly. Qin Baoshan seemed to be relieved. I don't know, Chu Yang said dejectedly. Who's your master? The bald old man asked. Du Shiqing, Chu Yang answered fluently. Du Shiqing. The two were surprised. What kind of person was Du Shiqing? My master is known as the #1 divine doctor in the lower 3 heavens. He can revive the dead. His medical skills are earth-shattering. Chu Yang puffed out his chest proudly. If you don't believe me, you can ask around in the lower 3 heavens. There should be very few people in the lower 3 heavens who don't know my master. The #1 divine doctor in the lower 3 heavens? The eyebrows of the bald old man and Qin Baoshan twitched. In their eyes, how awesome could a doctor in the lower three heavens be? To think that this little guy worships him to this extent, and is so proud. Not only is my master's medical skills unparalleled, but his cultivation is also very high. He's already a first-grade martial king. His skills are outstanding. Chu Yang continued to be proud. First-grade martial king? Stand out from the crowd? The bald old man and Qin Baoshan were speechless. If your master is outstanding as a first-grade martial king, then what about us two fifth-grade martial monarchs? Celestial beings? I really have nothing to say to this bumpkin. Ahem ahem. The bald old man finally could not help but cough twice. He cleared his throat and suppressed the urge to burst out laughing in his heart. He continued to ask, the technique you used to treat the injuries of the dozen people that night, was it also taught to you by your master? Chu Yang seemed to be conflicted for a while. After struggling for a while, he finally said reluctantly, this no. Chapter 766. Part 7 Chapter 41. Pointing at a monk and scolding a bald donkey innocent, the old man's eyes lit up, and he said hurriedly, who taught you this? Chu Yang struggled and said with difficulty, this is my personal secrets. Can I not say? The old man's eyes sharpened, and he suddenly roared, if you don't say, I'll kill you. With a boom, an incomparably strong aura pressed down, as if heaven and earth had suddenly collapsed. The aura at this moment was really unparalleled. Moreover, it had a strong spiritual bewitchment. This was the most effective method of interrogating prisoners in the law hall, and it had never failed. Chu Yang sat on the ground with a boom, and his consciousness seemed to have collapsed and been destroyed. His eyes turned white, his mouth foamed, his hands and feet spasmed, and his whole body trembled. He shouted incoherently, I'll say everything. I'll say everything. Then hurry up and say it. The bald old man let out another loud roar. His expression was ferocious, but he increased the power of his mental bewitchment. It was a bright and beautiful spring morning. I went out and came to a mountain. Chu Yang's eyes stared blankly, and he began to narrate unconsciously. The old man had been using his spiritual power to lock on Chu Yang's consciousness, heartbeat, and pulse. He smiled proudly. He was very sure that Chu Yang's consciousness was under his control. In such a state, even a deity would not be able to lie. But with Chu Yang's narration, the old man and Qin Baoshan slowly widened their eyes, and they revealed an incredulous look. Yes. Because what Chu Yang had said, and what they had heard were undoubtedly worlds apart. It was simply like the difference between heaven and earth. I found a cave, went in, and then fell down. It turned out that there was a stone chamber below. Chu Yang's eyes were misty, and he said in a muddle-headed manner, that was the residence of an elder. When I went in, I saw 4 words, it's fate to come here, pass on my legacy and save the world. The old man and Qin Baoshan's mouths were crooked, and they listened blankly. They're all healing methods of martial arts that have long been lost. There's the 5 ultimate Yin killing skill, the 7 poison meridian severing hand, the Yin Yang heavenly kick, the hell palm, the king of hell's soul-locking poison skill. The bald old man and Qin Baoshan had a headache listening to Chu Yang's long-winded explanation of a series of martial arts names. What the fuck is this? Stop! The bald old man stopped him in exasperation. How did you come to the upper 3 heavens? What have you done before? Tell me again. If he couldn't find any clues from his sect, then he would ask about his background. There were always clues to be found. This was the real method of taking drastic measures. Qin Baoshan nodded repeatedly. I'm in the lower 3 heavens. I've suffered. I've been bullied. Chu Yang wiped his snot and tears as he began to narrate his tragic life. Today he was beaten up by Hooligan Li. Tomorrow he would be blackmailed by Hooligan Zhang. And the day after tomorrow he would be beaten up by Hooligan Sun. This young man's life was really bitter. He was almost beaten up since he was young. He rambled on for more than an hour. And the names he mentioned were definitely not few. There were at least 100 names. And they were all unimportant people in the lower 3 heavens. The most awesome one was actually a hooligan boss on the street. The bald old man and Qin Baoshan's faces turned green, but they couldn't interrupt him at this time. They could only force themselves to listen. I met my master, my master. Although Chu Yang's eyes were dull, he was still eloquent. So I finished my apprenticeship and traveled around. Finally, one day, his voice suddenly became heavy with grief and indignation. What happened? The bald old man couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. He felt that there was a great turning point. I cured the illness of Squire Lu's daughter. He said that he would betroth his daughter to me. But he changed his mind. Not only that, he even beat me, drove me away, scolded me. Later, he even knocked me out and threw me into the forest. I was beaten up every time I went back. Boo-hoo! The bald old man and Qin Baoshan looked at each other. They could hear that this matter was obviously more stimulating for Chu Yang. So when he spoke till here, his emotions became agitated, and he even cried. His snot and tears flowed down his face. Then, Chu Yang's emotions became even more agitated. He muttered curses, and kept talking about the unfair treatment he had encountered. In the end, he gnashed his teeth, his face turned red, and his eyes shone fiercely. His voice was sonorous, and his mouth was full of old bastards, and old bastards. And it was two old bastards. And when he spoke, he looked at the bald old man and Qin Baoshan fiercely and scolded. You two old bastards! You two old bastards! The two of them were extremely depressed. Those who knew would know that he was scolding that Squire Lu, and Squire Lu's wife. Those who didn't know would think that we were being scolded. Damn it! Chu Yang became even more agitated when he spoke of the most infuriating part. He suddenly jumped up and grabbed the bald old man's lapel. His expression was extremely agitated, and he spasmed and twisted. He scolded loudly. Motherfucker, motherfucker! You old bastard! You old bastard with 1,000 green hats on your head! Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me? You old bastard! I'll fucking curse your grandchildren! Chu Yang roared, scolded, and spat his saliva. He was so angry that he looked like he was about to explode from anger. Chu Yang's saliva sprayed all over the bald old man's face. It was as if there was a rainstorm on the bald old man's head. He pulled Chu Yang's hand away from his chest and wiped his face in a flurry. His old face turned into a cigar, and he muttered curses. Motherfucker! Motherfucker! This is really an unexpected disaster. I've been in charge of interrogation for 200 years, and this is the first time I've encountered such a thing. Motherfucker, I'm so unlucky. Although he was so angry that he almost wanted to destroy the world, he knew that Chu Yang was definitely not scolding him deliberately. How could it be possible that Chu Yang's mind was controlled by him? He could only suffer in silence. Motherfucker, I've controlled a person's mind and made him scold me. If this were to be spread out, I'll definitely lose my reputation as a cheap bastard. The bald old man was extremely depressed. He turned his head to look at Qin Baoshan. Although Qin Baoshan's shoulder was still in great pain, he couldn't help but hold his stomach and laugh. Motherfucker, this is really too satisfying. This little bastard had unconsciously taken this bastard as his biggest enemy and scolded him so happily. This really makes me happy. The bald old man looked at Qin Baoshan fiercely. The meaning in his eyes was obvious. Don't tell anyone. Qin Baoshan laughed in pain. He nodded painfully and wiped the tears from his eyes. Suddenly, he spat them out again with a puff sound, and then laughed loudly. The bald old man flew into a rage. On the other side, Chu Yang didn't care whether he laughed or not. He was still staring blankly and rambling on. Sometimes he scolded, sometimes he begged. Then he finally talked about how he entered the cave. Then after a while, he talked about how his parents found him. Then, he went to the upper three heavens. Then he talked about how he didn't have any skills in the Chu clan. So he had to beg and open a clinic. Who knew that he would encounter so many people who were injured? Then Chu Yang excitedly put the blame on Chu Fian. Fourth uncle said that he could take this opportunity to earn a large sum of purple crystals to supplement his family. He was right. These people were all rich. Earning some purple crystals would be helpful for my cultivation in the future. Then, when he talked about the treatment, he exclaimed excitedly, I'm rich. I've really struck it rich, ha ha. So many purple crystals, sparkling purple piles upon piles. Wow. Ugh. I really don't know who that expert is. If he comes to fight every once in a while, Then I'll be so happy, ha ha ha. Earning purple crystals is so easy, ha ha. Chu Yang was dancing with joy. He was extremely excited. His saliva was splashing everywhere. It was obvious that his spirit was in a very excited state. Generally speaking, a person who had suddenly become a nouveau riche would have this kind of moral integrity. The entire morning had passed by the time Chu Yang had finished his nagging. The bald old man and Qin Baoshan looked at each other with black lines on their faces. They didn't expect such a result even in their dreams. The bald old man was especially depressed. I spent so much spiritual energy to control this little one's mind. But in the end, I only heard stories for the whole morning. A story of a difficult childhood. A story of the law of the jungle. A story of being bullied. A story of... And then a story of the rise of a nouveau riche. All the times, places and names were clear at a glance. Not to mention a person whose mind was controlled. Even a normal person wouldn't be able to fabricate such a flawless story without any preparation. Although this story was very ordinary, it was definitely not fabricated. Because it wasn't fabricated, the bald old man was even more depressed. What the hell is this? I can't hit him or scold him. Am I just going to suffer in silence? Someone pointed at my nose and scolded my mother, cursed my ancestors, and cursed my grandchildren. Am I just going to let it go like this? I'm really so wronged. What should I do? The bald old man looked at Chu Yang angrily. He couldn't wait to swallow Chu Yang up, but his words were directed at Qin Baoshan. What else can we do? Qin Baoshan said angrily. Quickly wake him up and let him treat my injuries. Don't tell me you want to kill him. I've accompanied you for the whole morning. Don't you know how many times I've almost died? Am I just going to let go of this scolding? The bald old man roared and pointed at his bald head. Look, there's even saliva on it. If you don't let it go, what else do you want to do? Qin Baoshan said angrily. This little one has all kinds of insidious treatment methods, and he's not suspicious at all. For the upper three heavens, such a person is a treasure wherever he goes. Besides, he's not scolding you. Chapter 767. Part 7 Chapter 42 Blackmail. Part 7 Chapter 42 Blackmail. When Chu Yang woke up, he saw a bald man gnashing his teeth and glaring at him fiercely with his eyes as big as a donkey. He was shocked and stepped back in a flurry. Then he sat on the ground and wailed, I didn't do anything. This sentence was really a stroke of genius. The bald old man was so angry that his nose became crooked. You've already scolded all my ancestors, and you still say such a sentence. But he couldn't flare up. He grunted as if he had a toothache and said, Yes, you didn't do anything. When he said this, he almost wanted to slap his own face a few times. It's the first time in my life that I've spoken against my conscience. To suffer such a loss in silence, to be forced to swallow blood and lose teeth, was something that had never happened before. He felt that a mouthful of blood had reached his throat. He couldn't swallow it down, nor could he spit it out. His face was red from holding back his anger. Actually, it was no wonder. The interrogation technique of law enforcement officers was the #1 technique in the heavens. It had never failed before. For ordinary people, even people with similar cultivation as this bald old man, as long as they fell into his hands, they would also find a way to deal with him. At most, it would take a little more effort. But he was extremely unlucky. The person he interrogated this time was actually the master of the Tribulation Sword. And since the master of the Tribulation Sword had appeared, then the sword spirit was naturally in the master of the Tribulation Sword. This meant that there were 2 souls in one body. How could he not suffer a great loss when he only controlled one? And this point was not recorded in the law enforcement headquarters. After all, the law enforcement organization was established to help the master of the Tribulation Sword. Who would think of interrogating the master of the Tribulation Sword? Who would be so daring? In this way, it was reasonable and logical for him to swallow this grievance in silence. Then, can I leave now? Chu Yang looked at him pitifully. His voice was trembling. Obviously, he was still extremely scared. But in the eyes of the bald old man, it was natural. In such a place, except for law enforcement officers, no ordinary person would want to stay here for even a blink of an eye. You're too kind. Divine Dr. Chu, I haven't entertained you properly yet. Against his conscience, the old bald man swallowed his saliva and scolded himself for being useless in his heart. He forced a fake smile. To tell you the truth, Divine Dr. Chu, I've invited you here because I have something to ask of you. You have something to ask of me? Chu Yang blinked his eyes in bewilderment and said, May I ask, what is it? This old man's friend was also injured that night. The bald old man finally brought up the main topic. His face was full of depression. Originally, he had planned to capture this little boy and bring him here to solve the case and treat his illness. Who would have thought that reality and imagination would be completely twisted? And he had no choice but to lower his voice and beg for help. This was truly an unprecedented encounter. Oh, so that's how it is. The cold sweat on Chu Yang's face lessened. He slowly calmed down. From fear and uneasiness, he slowly and gradually regained the bearing of a divine doctor. He even glared at the bald old man with resentment, fully expressing his dissatisfaction. This little boy really knows how to take advantage of the situation. The bald old man only felt that he was about to spit out blood. It's not that I want to say this. Chu Yang obviously still had some scruples. But when he heard that the other party actually had something to ask of him, he gradually became a little arrogant. Old man, what you're doing is wrong. How can you invite a doctor like this? You actually forced your way here to capture people, and even asked for bribes from my clan. As Chu Yang spoke, he finally relaxed. His anger gradually rose and gradually became furious. He seemed to have adapted to his current role. He finally realized, oh, so you're asking me for a favor? Such a mentality. So he climbed up from the ground and simply threw a tantrum. Aren't these bastards? You law enforcement officers can't be unreasonable. You actually asked for bribes when you asked for help? How can there be such logic in this world? The bald old man's and Qin Baoshan's faces instantly turned red. This matter was really not done properly. Those two bastards, they actually dared to ask for bribes. Qin Baoshan flew into a rage. How dare they? Chu Yang was furious. Not only did they ask for bribes, but they even threatened me. They're extremely arrogant. They escorted me here like a prisoner, and kept a straight face all the way here like a corpse. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. Suddenly, he flicked his sleeves and walked away. I'm not going to treat anymore. I can't treat any illness. And I don't know how to treat any injuries. Let's go home. Slow down, slow down. The bald old man really wanted to cry. If he really let Chu Yang leave, Qin Baoshan and the rest would definitely skin him alive. Divine Dr. Chu. Divine Dr. Chu, this can be discussed. What's there to discuss? Chu Yang scolded. Look at what you've done. In this world, there was actually such a thing as confusing right and wrong, calling a deer a horse, being completely unreasonable, and inverting right and wrong. I'm a good citizen. I've been cautious and careful all my life. I've always taken pleasure in helping others. I've always been merciful and benevolent. I've always been kind and benevolent. I've always been afraid of harming the lives of ants when I sweep the floor. I've always been protective of moths when I cover gauze lanterns. I've contributed a little strength to the suffering of the world, but I've actually met with such misfortune. Heavens, please open your eyes. What kind of world is this? Chu Yang wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit spurted out a mouthful of blood. Qin Baoshan's face turned pale, and the veins on the bald old man's forehead were throbbing. He didn't dare to get angry at Chu Yang, so he could only roar and stomp his feet. Bring those two bastards here. Not long after, the two iron plate law enforcement officers came here with puzzled faces. As soon as they came in, the bald old man rushed over and gave each of them a dozen slaps to the face. He slapped them until their heads swung back and forth. Before the two of them could even react, their heads had already swollen into pig heads. Bastards! The bald old man scolded and winked at them. Didn't I tell you to be polite when you invite Divine Dr. Chu? Serve him carefully. You two bastards. How dare you treat Divine Dr. Chu like this? If I don't skin you alive today, how can I face Divine Dr. Chu? The two iron plate law enforcement officers in front of him were already stunned by the slaps. Now they fainted after being scolded. They only reacted when they saw the bald old man blinking his eyes. The two of them hurriedly knelt down. Yes, Commander, you're right. It's our fault. The bald old man breathed a sigh of relief and continued scolding. You two even asked for bribes. Where are they? Hurry up and take them out. What are you waiting for? Damn thing. Yes. We were muddle-headed. Commander, please forgive us. The two Iron Plate law enforcement officers were extremely embarrassed. They thought, didn't we do things like this before? Besides, we've already secretly placed half of the purple crystals in your room. Do we still have to steal them? It's absolutely impossible to steal them. We can only pay for it ourselves. The two of them felt extremely wronged. They had no choice but to say, yes, we'll go back and get the purple crystals immediately. There's a total of 10 purple crystals, not one less. What 10 crystals? It's obviously 300 crystals. Chu Yang immediately flew into a rage. He pointed to the sky and scolded the earth. He was so indignant that he stomped his feet. How can there be such a shameless thing in the world? After receiving 300 purple crystals, you actually have the cheek to say that it's only 10 crystals. What kind of world is this? Law enforcement officers are actually so evil. I want to cry but have no tears. I'm so indignant. I'm going to vomit blood. 300 crystals. We're the ones who are going to vomit blood. The two Iron Plate law enforcement officers wanted to cry, but had no tears. It's obviously 10 crystals. How did it become 300 crystals in the blink of an eye? Where are we going to get the other 240 crystals? Chu Yang was still unforgiving. Oh my God, I really can't believe the greed of the human heart. 300 crystals. Your 2 big bags are already full. Now it's actually become 10 crystals in the blink of an eye. He rushed in front of Qin Baoshan in indignation. Elder, did you hear that? 300 purple crystals actually became 10 crystals. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit said doubtfully. It's obviously 10 crystals. In his mind, Chu Yang roared at the sword spirit, get lost. Then, he faced Qin Baoshan and said tearfully, how can there be such injustice in the world? Elder, it's not that I don't want to treat your illness. It's just that my mind is already in a mess. Elder, please find someone else. I'm powerless. Qin Baoshan flew into a rage. Ignoring the pain in his shoulder, he flashed forward and kicked the two fellows up like rubber balls. He roared furiously. What are you waiting for? Go and get the purple crystals. Bastards. 300 purple crystals. If there's even one less, I'll wipe out your entire clan. If you delay this old man's treatment, both of you and your clans will die. The two people were kicked quite seriously, but not to the extent of fainting. But when they heard this sentence, they rolled their eyes and fainted completely. This time, it's over. How can there be such shameless people in the world? We've obviously received 10 crystals. Boo-hoo. And even gave the commander 30 crystals. Where are we going to get 300 crystals? Why aren't you going? The bald old man roared fiercely. The two people then climbed up in a daze. Just as they were about to walk out, they heard Divine Dr. Chu say dejectedly, Elder, I'm really not in the mood to take back the clan's property. Hey, can you please let me rest for a while? The two Iron Plate law enforcement officers were stunned, as if they were struck by lightning. They wailed in their hearts, you're forcing us to our deaths. I've never seen such a black-hearted person. Qin Baoshan was also speechless. You're not in the mood, but I'm in pain all the time. He was so angry that he jumped over and kicked them twice. Listen, the two of you, if you don't come back in 15 minutes, the two of you can just kill your entire clan and commit suicide. The two people ran away as if they had lost their parents. Divine Dr. Chu murmured. Where's the justice in this world? Where's the justice? Where's the conscience? Where's the justice? Is this still the world ruled by law enforcement officers? Oh my God, I'm going to collapse. The bald old man covered his face with his sleeves. I'm really going to collapse. Damn it, I actually caught such an excellent person. These few days I've been extremely depressed. I always feel that I've missed out some plot. I'm always trembling with fear when I'm writing, for fear that I'll overdo it. But I just can't think of it. What did I miss out? Everyone, help me think. Damn it, I'm so flustered. Chapter 768. The old bald man wanted to cry but had no tears. With his experience, how could he not see that the two iron medallion wielders had actually collected 10 purple crystals? Besides, you've just returned to the Chu clan and have lost all your martial arts. Will the Chu clan take out 300 purple crystals for you? Is this a joke? But the other party is blackmailing us, and we're not only in the right, but also in need of help. Don't return it? What to do? Not only did he see it, Qin Baoshan was also not stupid. He could see it as well, but seeing it was one thing, and giving it to him or not was another thing. Now they were forced to the edge of the cliff. They had no choice but to give it to him. The two looked at each other and shook their heads gloomily. The old bald man's lips moved slightly, and he transmitted his voice to Qin Baoshan. Old Qin, we've fallen into a trap this time. We've been completely blackmailed by this immature brat. The only thing I don't understand is that this bastard was still in fear and trepidation just now. How did he change his role so quickly? Once he heard that we have a favor to ask of him, he immediately turned hostile? He's simply a hooligan. Qin Baoshan sighed and transmitted his voice. You still can't figure it out? Listen to his childhood. He grew up in a hooligan's nest. Those hooligans' ability to pull strings is not limited to this. It'd be strange if he didn't do this. The old bald man nodded repeatedly. You're right. Brother Qin is really observant. Then he asked, now we can only take the purple crystals to stabilize this brat. Let him treat your injuries, and then Qin Baoshan sighed slightly. Let's take one step at a time. If he were to treat his injuries and accept the other party's kindness, then fall out with them, wouldn't that be ungrateful? Let's not talk about other things. How can we overcome our own inner demons? The old bald man's eyes flashed fiercely and he said, we'll talk about this later. Qin Baoshan had guessed what he was going to do, but he sighed and said, do as you see fit. At this moment, Chu Yang finally recovered from his emotions and said, Elder, why don't I take a look at your injuries first? This way, we'll know what your injuries are. Qin Baoshan was overjoyed and said, then I'll really trouble you, divine Dr. Chu. Chu Yang sighed and said sanctimoniously, a doctor has the heart of a parent. After all, I can't bear to see you in pain like this. The old bald man turned his head and covered his mouth to cough. Motherfucker, your heart of a doctor's heart of a parent was exchanged for 300 purple crystals. Even the high priests of a high priest of a medicine. Senior, please relax your entire body and disperse your protective Xian technique. Otherwise, this junior Xian technique will be crippled, and I won't be able to diagnose you. Chu Yang said indifferently. Qin Baoshan's injuries. There was really nothing to be afraid of in his own territory. Seeing that Qin Baoshan had unbuttoned his clothes, Chu Yang stretched out his hand and pressed down on the wound with 2 fingers. Qin Baoshan groaned. He only felt that the 2 fingers were directly buried in his flesh, as if they had entered one of his internal organs. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that the fingers didn't even break his skin. It was as if his tendons and bones were pinched and pulled by Qin Baoshan's 2 fingers. Although Qin Baoshan's cultivation was excellent, and his endurance was much higher than ordinary people, he still groaned. His face turned snow-white, and soybean-sized beads of sweat dripped down from his forehead. Chu Yang finally retracted his fingers and frowned. Seeing Chu Yang's serious face, the bald man and Qin Baoshan felt uneasy and asked, Divine Dr. Chu, is there a problem? It's quite troublesome. Chu Yang frowned and looked at Qin Baoshan, who seemed to be angry, but didn't dare to flare up. Finally, Chu Yang sighed and said, How can you mess around? Mess around? Qin Baoshan asked puzzledly. Elder's injuries were originally caused by a very insidious martial art. According to this injury, it's definitely the meridian smashing finger. Even his shoulders and arms were completely sealed, and the pain is unbearable. If it's not unsealed after a day, the surrounding meridians will start to crack. If it's not unsealed after 2 days, it will start to crack. After 3 days, it will start to disintegrate. This is the horror of the meridian smashing finger. Then the whole shoulder will be crippled. Chu Yang said with great familiarity. Yes, that's right. Qin Baoshan's eyes brightened, and he became excited. This guy can really cure it. If you came to find me immediately, and I unsealed it for you, it wouldn't be a big problem. But your injuries have been delayed for at least 3 days. Chu Yang said. Yes, it's been almost 5 days, Qin Baoshan said shamefully. It's fine if it's only delayed. After I unsealed your broken meridians, I'll use a secret method to make medicine, and take it for half a month. Then you'll be able to recover. But you actually. Chu Yang shook his head and sighed. The more Qin Baoshan listened, the more uneasy he felt. He couldn't help but ask nervously, how? But you actually found a doctor to take a look at you, and unsealed it for you. But it's completely unreasonable. Chu Yang glared at him angrily. He actually unsealed it for you according to the treatment method of the meridian smashing palm. This is simply the behavior of a quack and a bastard. Qin Baoshan's face suddenly turned pale. He found an internal doctor and treated him once. According to the doctor, there was no doubt that this was the meridian smashing palm, and treated him for a while. At that time, he really felt relieved, and even gave a big gift to the doctor. Then, he came back excitedly, only to find that it was even more painful after a day and a half. When he found the doctor again, he was at a loss again. Divine Dr. Chu. What's the consequence of this? The bald old man was also frightened. He was the one who introduced that doctor to Qin Baoshan. What's the consequence? Chu Yang said angrily. There's no consequence. It's just that I can't remove the root of the problem even after half a year. And now, it seems that it's not just that. This is the consequence. Do you understand? Huh. Even though the two of them were extraordinarily calm, they couldn't help but exclaim. Move your shoulder. Don't be afraid of pain. Yes, lift it up. Press your right chest with your hand, and press it down with all your strength. Yes, with all your strength. Chu Yang waved his fingers indifferently. A finger was placed on his wrist without exerting any strength. Qin Baoshan lifted his left shoulder, and pressed his right hand on his right chest. At the same time, the sword spirit's spiritual power had unknowingly entered Qin Baoshan's body through Chu Yang's hand. Then, the spiritual power was dormant in Qin Baoshan's right chest, ready to explode. Qin Baoshan exerted his strength and suddenly screamed. He felt as if a piece of his flesh had been ruthlessly cut out by a knife. Instantly he felt a heart-wrenching pain. He sweated profusely and almost fainted. But he was also in so much pain that he couldn't breathe or speak. He could only squat on the ground and gasp for cold air. What's wrong? The bald old man was shocked. Nothing. It's just that he was badly treated by that quack. Not only did he not heal his left shoulder, but his meridians were also twisted. The treatment method of the meridian breaking palm is actually to reverse the meridians in the opposite direction, and then twist them back. To put it plainly, it's to perform the meridian breaking palm in the opposite direction. His meridians weren't twisted originally, but after the treatment of the meridian breaking palm, it was equivalent to bearing the meridian breaking palm without any resistance. Instead, his meridians were twisted and broken. Chu Yang said lightly, the most powerful thing about the quack you found is that he performed the meridian breaking palm on top of the meridian breaking finger injury. Immediately, the meridians of your entire upper body and shoulders were affected. Moreover, with the power of the meridian breaking finger, it became a strange injury that was neither the meridian breaking palm nor the meridian breaking finger. He looked at Qin Baoshan with pity. Fortunately, you found me now. Otherwise, your right shoulder would be finished after one more day, and it's closely followed by your heart meridians. Alas, I forgot that even if you found me, you still have injuries without medicine. Qin Baoshan opened his mouth wide and made some noises. I say, does the doctor you found have a grudge against you? Isn't it obvious that he's trying to kill you? Besides, if he can't treat an injury that he's not confident in, then he shouldn't treat it. Now you're in big trouble. Damn it. Chu Yang shook his head and sighed. Qin Baoshan was dumbfounded. The bald old man was also dumbfounded. In an instant, both of them had the same expression. They wanted to cry but had no tears. Then Qin Baoshan grabbed the bald old man's lapel furiously and roared fiercely. Sha Xinliang. Damn it, you found such a good doctor for me. You've harmed me. What kind of grudge do I have with you? I hate you for harming me like this. Qin Baoshan was extremely indignant. The bald old man, Sha Xinliang, was so anxious that his tears almost fell down. He hurriedly explained, Brother Qin, Ghost Qin. This has nothing to do with me. Then whose business is it? Qin Baoshan roared like a thunderbolt. My injury wasn't serious at first, but the quack you introduced caused me to become like this. I'm about to lose my life, and you still say that it has nothing to do with you? This sentence reminded Sha Xinliang. He hurriedly turned his head to look at Chu Yang, and said in a pleading tone, Little brother, you see. Brother Qin, can he still be saved? Chu Yang snorted and said, Why are the two of you still arguing? Elder, you've been driven to a dead end by the quack, but this elder Sha, there's a black aura between his eyebrows. It's obvious that he's been seriously injured, and he's poisoned by yin and yang. Then, he's been treated unlawfully, and the poison has entered his internal amine. He only has 3 to 5 years of life left. If the two of you, you'll probably die at the same time. This sentence was like a bolt from the blue. Sha Xinliang's body shook and his face turned pale. He said blankly, What did you say? How do you know that I've been seriously injured? I've been poisoned by yin and yang? All kinds of terrible consequences surged into his mind at the same time. The more Sha Xinliang thought about it, the more scared he became. The facts proved that the divine doctor he introduced to Qin Baoshan was a quack. Or rather, he was a second-rate doctor. And my injury was treated by him. What if he treated me like how he treated Qin Baoshan? The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. He couldn't even stand up. With Qin Baoshan as an example, how could Sha Xinliang still believe in the divine doctor, who was in charge of the Hall of Justice? And Chu Yang's medical skills were so brilliant, how could he be wrong? Chu Yang smiled mysteriously and sighed deeply. The two of you have met a quack. Chapter 769. Chapter 44. Little brother, you're really open and above-board. This situation was naturally the result of Chu Yang's instruction to the sword spirit. And the result was very different from the one given by the sword spirit. In fact, after the sword spirit checked Sha Xinliang's situation, he said to Chu Yang like this. Although Sha Xinliang's meridians are deep, they're weak at the foundation. He must have suffered a serious injury that damaged his foundation. Moreover, his heart meridian is a little hyperactive, but his face is dark. Obviously, he's been poisoned by both yin and yang. But he didn't get rid of it completely, and it's left in his body. Although it's harmless and doesn't affect his lifespan, it's still a problem in the future. This simple sentence, after being changed by Chu Yang, suddenly became different. Sha Xinliang was almost scared out of his wits. I only have 4 to 5 years of lifespan left. I don't want to die. Seeing the two people like this, Chu Yang smiled sinisterly. He wasn't so kind-hearted to heal these two people. But he had no foundation and no backing at the moment. In this flat mountain ridge, he really didn't have much confidence. Now that he had a heaven-sent opportunity to tie these two people to his belt, it would be too convenient for him to do things in the future. These two people weren't ordinary people. One was the person in charge of the law enforcement auction hall here. The other was the first commander of the law enforcement hall here. There were a total of 3 halls for law enforcement officers here. And the other one was the bloodpayers' hall. If Chu Yang had these two people under his control, it would be equivalent to having a high position in the flat mountain ridge. So, from the beginning, Minister Chu had never thought of letting these two old things go. Damn it! Even a street gangster needs to find a yamen officer to protect him. No matter what, he's still the young master of the Chu clan. If he wants to find someone, he should find someone who's important enough. Looking at Sha Xinliang, Chu Yang sneered and said, How do I know? Let me ask you before you got injured. Even if your face was dark, it shouldn't be so dark, right? Look for a mirror, and see if the dark color between your eyebrows is far beyond the color of your cheeks. This was pure nonsense. After an ordinary person grew old, would his skin still be as fair and tender as when he was a teenager? Moreover, Sha Xinliang was a law enforcement officer who stayed in such a ruthless place like the law enforcement hall every day. If his skin became more and more like that of a gigolo's, That would be a strange thing. As for the area between his eyebrows, that was even darker. Motherfucker. Which person in the world wasn't darker here than anywhere else? Of course, if we were in the 21st century, we would all know about this. But in the Chongtiang continent, where could he find such a profound theory? Sha Xinliang's legs went soft at once, and he sat down on the ground. His head was full of cold sweat, and his bald head was shining in an instant. The two of them broke out in cold sweat, and were dumbstruck. Seeing the two of them like this, Chu Yang made a stunned expression. The two of you, don't tell me you found the same divine doctor? The two of them nodded with teary faces. Now they even had the thought of chopping that godly doctor into pieces. Really, I'm speechless. Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. You two are really brothers in distress. You even found the same quack to kill yourself. I was also speechless. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit was full of admiration for this Lord Sword Master's ability to deal with people. He's too awesome. He had obviously dissolved some of the force of the meridian smashing finger and alleviated some of the symptoms. Although it couldn't be cured completely, it was still going in a good direction. But in Chu Yang's words, it became a murder for money, and he was about to die. And this Sha Xinliang, he was fatally injured, and his foundation was hurt. It was already very good that Chu Yang could save him. What's more, how could this kind of injury that damaged the foundation be healed? Especially at his age, it's even more impossible. And that poison, as long as he didn't take heavy pills, there would definitely be some residue of the yin and yang poison. Besides, it's not life-threatening. Can't it be reduced to a level that the human body can bear? But in Chu Yang's words, it became another case of murder. Alas, it seems that I'm also an accomplice. Actually, Sha Xinliang and Qin Baoshan couldn't be blamed for being stupid. On the contrary, the two of them were not stupid, but very smart people. How could they be stupid when they were able to cultivate to the monarch level? But how could they treat this matter with a normal heart when it concerned their own safety? Moreover, Chu Yang's title of divine doctor had already been deeply ingrained in their hearts, and everything he said was clear and logical. How could they dare to doubt him? We were even more speechless. Sha Xinliang and Qin Baoshan looked at each other and wanted to cry. Both of them were ruined by the same quack. It wasn't enough for them to be fooled once, and they even dragged their sworn brothers to be fooled for the second time. Sha Xinliang sighed and pulled Qin Baoshan's hand. Brother Qin, I didn't expect that both of us would fail in the same ditch. Qin Baoshan was a little speechless. If it weren't for you, would I have failed in this small ditch? Damn it. I wanted to look for this guy so badly that night. Wasn't it because of you that I was dragged to look for a doctor? But what's the use of saying this at this moment and place? Qin Baoshan could only sigh deeply. If I can see that bastard again in this life, I'll definitely eat him alive. Sha Xinliang's facial muscles twitched and his face was hideous. The next moment, both of them were startled and turned to look at Chu Yang at the same time, as if they had seen a living bodhisattva. At the same time they asked, Divine Dr. Chu, can my injuries still be cured? Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Did I say that it can't be cured? Both of them immediately screamed, and felt as if flowers were blooming at the same time. They almost hugged Chu Yang and spun a few rounds, and their eyes were filled with tears. Damn it, it turns out that there's still hope for old people. It's just that. Chu Yang was extremely distressed. It's just that immediately made the two people on tenterhooks. Chu Yang continued. Both of you have been treated badly by mediocre doctors. It's as difficult as ascending to the heavens if you want to reverse it. It's not something that can be done overnight, and it involves a few elixirs. I can only be responsible for controlling your injuries first. As for your complete recovery, it depends on whether the elixirs can be found. If they can be found, I'll be responsible for the treatment. Elder Qin will be fine within a year, and Elder Sha will be able to recover completely within 2 years. Even your damaged primordial qi can be replenished. Both of them were overjoyed at the same time. Really? Chu Yang waved his hand miserably. Don't be happy too early. I haven't finished yet. But if the elixirs can't be found, there's nothing I can do. The two of them immediately felt their hearts in their mouths. They looked at Chu Yang anxiously. What elixirs? They prayed secretly in their hearts that it shouldn't be those rare treasures that would really cost them their lives. Purple crystals. Purple crystals are here. At this moment, the two iron plate law enforcement officers ran in, sweating profusely. Each of them carried a big parcel in their hands. Oh my God, we borrowed from almost everyone and kowtowed like pounding garlic. Only then did we manage to gather 300 purple crystals, and hurriedly sent them over. These two unlucky bastards interrupted at the most crucial moment of the conversation. Xia Xinliang and Qin Baoshan turned back at the same time and glared at the two law enforcement officers angrily. It was as if he wanted to swallow the two of them alive. He gritted his teeth and said word by word, "Bastards." The two iron plate law enforcement officers were stunned at once. They didn't know what was going on. What's wrong? Put down the purple crystals and get out. Xia Xinliang shouted angrily. Quickly disappear in front of me in the blink of an eye. With a whoosh, the two of them disappeared instantly. Who has the patience to be in front of you? Damn it. Do you even need to blink for such a long time? Xia Xinliang strode forward and carried the two big parcels over. With a smile, he bent down slightly and said to Chu Yang in a humble tone, "Divine Dr. Chu, cough cough cough. Your purple crystals." There was actually a hint of flattery in his voice. Chu Yang smiled and said, "Elder Xia, I've gone overboard in this matter. Haha, we're all sensible people. The two of them came to my house and only asked for 10 purple crystals. But since the situation has changed, of course I have to teach them a lesson and ask for 300 purple crystals from them. Haha, please don't take it to heart." That's right. This kind of scum should be taught a lesson like this. Qin Baoshan nodded repeatedly and agreed. Yes, it's only satisfying to teach this kind of scum a lesson. Xia Xinliang clenched his left fist and smashed it into the palm of his right hand. It's really satisfying. The two of them looked at Chu Yang and praised at the same time. Little brother, you're really an open and above-board person. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit opened his eyes wide and was already speechless. How did this matter develop? How did Chu Yang confess voluntarily in the blink of an eye, and even act as if he's confiding in them? And in the eyes of these two old men, Chu Yang actually became an open and above-board person. How is he open and above-board? Why don't I see it? Of course, it's better to share it with others than to share it alone. Come, two brothers, let's give each of us 100 purple crystals. Chu Yang greeted them enthusiastically. The distance between them shortened rapidly, and they had already become brothers. The two of them shook their heads together and said unhappily, "Little brother, you're simply insulting us. How can we take your things?" If Chu Yang had said the same sentence before, not to mention 100 purple crystals per person, he might not even be able to get a single piece, and might even lose his life here. But now that he said it, not only did he win the favor of the two of them, but the two of them also wouldn't dare to accept these 100 purple crystals. What if they fall out with them after accepting them? What should I do? His life was still in the other party's hands. Then the medicine. Xia Xinliang rubbed his hands. Yes, I almost forgot. Do you have any medicine? Chu Yang patted his forehead, put the 2 bags of purple crystals under his buttocks, and sat on them. Xia Xinliang went to get the medicine personally, and Chu Yang started to write rapidly. Old brother Qin, this is your prescription. You must find these herbs within 2 months. Of course. Chu Yang earnestly exhorted as he wrote at a high speed. I know. Qin Baoshan looked at the names of the medicines with great concentration. 500-year-old golden Ganoderma, snow ginseng, 500-year-old snow lotus, golden blood ginseng. Jade petal Ganoderma. Qin Baoshan was relieved. Only the jade petal Ganoderma was difficult to get, and the others were very ordinary. But this jade petal Ganoderma shouldn't be difficult for me. Last night, I stayed up all night and didn't write a single word. From the book reviews, mobile book reviews, and Tieba book reviews, I browsed a few pirated websites with book reviews and made a bunch of records. Finally, I understood what I had forgotten. Well, fortunately, it's not too late to mend the pen after a sheep is lost. I should also rejoice. Chapter 770. Chu Yang smiled and said, Elder Brother Qin, look carefully. There are a total of 37 medicinal herbs here, and most of them are in urgent need, and this jade clover Ganoderma should be more difficult to get. He frowned and picked up the brush to write. As he wrote, he said, although this jade clover Ganoderma is precious, it doesn't have much benefit for your injury. But I was thinking that your cultivation has reached a bottleneck. If you can find it together with other medicinal herbs, you can break through your meridians and break through the bottleneck. But it's quite troublesome, so I'd better write it off. Break through the bottleneck. Qin Baoshan's eyes immediately widened. Ignoring the piercing pain in his left hand, he stretched out both his hands and hugged the prescription like a hen protecting her eggs. He shook his head like a rattledrum. No, it's not troublesome. It's not troublesome at all. I've been stuck in this bottleneck for 30 years. I thought it was hopeless, but now I finally have a chance. If I let it go, won't I regret it for the rest of my life? I mustn't miss it. Since Elder Brother Qin insists, I'll accept it respectfully. But if I can't find it within 2 months, I'll have to give up my advancement and save my life first. Chu Yang said seriously. Elder Brother Qin, this isn't a trifling matter. I hope you won't be disappointed because you can't find the jade clover Ganoderma. Yes, I know. Qin Baoshan refused to let go of the prescription and promised repeatedly. He secretly made up his mind. Even if I have to risk my life, I'll find the jade clover Ganoderma within 2 months at all costs. Chu Yang nodded helplessly and smiled. He turned his head and met Sha Xinliang's fiery eyes. Elder Brother Sha, I just took a look at you, and I'll take your pulse again. Chu Yang stretched out his hands. Now the relationship between the three of them had improved by leaps and bounds. They were already very intimate with each other. If Chu Yang said, why don't we become sworn brothers? These two old men who were discussing about killing Chu Yang just now would definitely agree. Sha Xinliang stretched out his hand cooperatively and said gratefully, it's all thanks to you, little brother. Chu Yang felt Sha Xinliang's pulse, and the sword spirit took the opportunity to enter Sha Xinliang's body. Now Sha Xinliang's condition had unknowingly become like what Chu Yang said. Really? It's more serious than I thought. Divine Dr. Chu frowned, shook his head and sighed. I didn't expect quacks to harm people so uniformly. Sha Xinliang gritted his teeth so hard that his teeth could be heard. This is infuriating. This old man was so grateful to him, and treated him as a close friend for so many years. But this guy actually treated this old man like a fool for so many years. This hatred was absolutely irreconcilable. Not only was it for revenge, but it was also for his life. Just thinking about it made him so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. What a joke. It was as if this old man had recognized a thief as his father, and had provided for that bastard for so many years. Old brother Sha, feel the lower left corner of your dantian, and press it hard. Also press it hard 1 inch above the heart meridian. Also press it hard 1 finger in front of the Baihui acupoint on the top of your head. Press it hard. Chu Yang instructed as he loosened his hand. Sha Xinliang followed her instructions and pressed his dantian. He only felt as if he was suddenly stabbed by a knife. Instantly, he felt an overwhelming pain, and cold sweat dripped down his face. Half of it was because of the pain, and the other half was because of the shock. When he reached an inch above the heart meridian, he felt as if thousands of steel needles had pierced into his body. He couldn't help but scream in pain. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Groping Tu went to the front of the Baihui acupoint and pressed down hard. Ow xin Sha Xinliang screamed miserably. He rolled his eyes and fainted. Then, he fell backward, and the back of his head hit the ground with a bang sound without any sound. Qin Baoshan was shocked. What's wrong with Lao Sha? His internal injuries have been turned into abscesses by mediocre doctors. Chu Yang said sympathetically. It's all right. You can wake him up if you pinch his lower body. This is only a temporary coma caused by pain. It's not a big deal. Qin Baoshan followed Chu Yang's instructions. He pinched Sha Baoyang's lower body hard. Ah, wah. Sha Baoyang roared and woke up. But after he woke up, he sat on the ground in a daze. His eyes were dull, and his spirit seemed to have been drawn away by someone in an instant. He also seemed to have aged a lot. Even the light on his bald head seemed to have dimmed a lot. After a long time, he suddenly said in a daze, as if he was in a dream, "It's real. Lao Sha. You have to face reality. We still have little brother Chu." Qin Baoshan persuaded him worriedly. The next moment, Sha Xinliang jumped up like a giant bear that was trapped in a cage. He scolded angrily, "Tong Wuxin, you're really heartless. I'll fuck your mother, I'll fuck your mother, I'll fuck you. I'll fuck you. I'll fuck you." Countless three-character scriptures gushed out of his mouth like a surging river, cursing that divine Dr. Tong Wuxin to the point that if his ancestor was still alive, he would be jumping in his coffin at this moment. Chu Yang coughed. It was as if Sha Xinliang and Qin Baoshan had heard an imperial edict. They stopped cursing and came over, calling Chu Yang affectionately, "Brother Chu, little brother. Brother Sha, there's no time to lose. I'll give you a prescription first." Chu Yang truly looked like a divine doctor. He bemoaned the state of the universe and pitied the fate of mankind as he said, "This injury of yours, it can be said that it's really troublesome. Alas." Sha Xinliang was trembling with fear as he stood behind Chu Yang's shoulder and watched him write. His bald head was full of sweat. Chu Yang's brush moved like dragons and snakes. He finished the prescription in one stroke and blew on it, saying, "Brother Sha, this injury of yours, it's an old injury, and you've been framed, so it's more troublesome. Please note that the 20 medicinal herbs on the prescription are more precious and rarer than Brother Qin's. So, you have to hurry up, because you only have half a year's time. In another half a year's time, the poison will enter your bone marrow and hurt your lifeline. By then, there'll be no way to save you." The medicinal herbs that Chu Yang had prescribed for the two of them were the ones that Chu Yang needed to restore his cultivation and solidify his spirit. And the jade clover Ganoderma and heavenly jade elixir were the ones that Chu Luo needed. Everyone was not stupid. Chu Yang naturally did not dare to mix poison into the prescription, so he could only add these two tonics. Sha Xinliang took the prescription with trembling hands. He was full of gratitude and almost couldn't speak. "Thank you, thank you, thank you so much." Only then did he have time to look at the medicinal herbs on the prescription. When he saw the first one, he couldn't help but feel relieved. Although it's hard to find, it's not too difficult. When he saw the second one, it was still the same. The third one could still be found. After looking at the names of more than 20 medicinal herbs, he felt relieved. Although it's precious and rare, it's not a problem for me at all. When he saw the last one, Sha Xinliang finally shivered and blurted out, "Heavenly jade elixir?" "Yes, it's heavenly jade elixir." Chu Yang said seriously, "This is the root of treating your injury. Your foundation is damaged. Apart from the great medicinal herbs, only heavenly jade elixir can help you recover. If we can't find this, even if we find all the previous 25 medicinal herbs, it'll be in vain." Sha Xinliang's lips trembled, and he said firmly, "Little brother, don't worry. I'll definitely find the heavenly jade elixir within half a year." Chu Yang held his hand tightly and said, "Brother, I won't say anything else. You have to take care of your own illness. During this period of time, think more about happy things. Try to make yourself happy first, and then maintain this state of mind. Don't let anything happen to you. This is beneficial for your illness." Sha Xinliang almost cried and nodded. "Second brother is going to die soon. How can I be happy? I'll treat the two of you first to relieve your pain." Chu Yang sighed deeply and said, "That medicine. You have to hurry up. You must hurry up. This is..." He wiped his eyes and said, "Why are the three of you so congenial? Although I've returned to my clan after coming to the upper three heavens, but there aren't many people in my generation who are so close to me. Brothers, I don't want to lose the two of you." The two were greatly moved. They held Chu Yang's hand tightly and said solemnly, "Little brother, good brother, don't worry, with us here, even thunder won't be able to touch you in the upper three heavens." "That's hard to say." Chu Yang sighed and said, "For example, today, alas." The two elders laughed and said, "Little brother, don't worry. This kind of thing will never happen again." Sha Xinliang squinted his eyes and said, "Not only that, if little brother wants to punish anyone in this flat mountain ridge, I'll definitely do my best till the day I die." Really? Chu Yang asked emotionally with tears in his eyes. I swear to the heavens, if I violate this oath, I'll be struck by lightning and pierced by thousands of arrows. After I die, my body and soul will be destroyed, and I won't be able to reincarnate. Sha Xinliang raised his hand and swore solemnly. Chu Yang seemed to be so moved that he was stunned. His tears flowed down, and he even forgot to stop him from swearing. He finally reacted and his whole body shivered. Then, he grabbed Sha Xinliang's hand and said, Brother Sha, you mustn't do this, Little brother, I'm not worthy of such a heavy oath. Little brother, I'll really go. This is nothing. Sha Xinliang said straightforwardly. You and I treat each other with utmost sincerity. It's natural for me to take care of my little brother. Even if the second law enforcer and the Dharma Supreme were here, they wouldn't be able to say anything. Chu Yang was extremely moved. He pulled Sha Xinliang's hand and shook it continuously, and said, Brother Sha, please sit down. I'll relieve your pain right away. After Chu Yang's treatment, Sha Xinliang's body really didn't hurt anymore. Qin Baoshan's injury was also under further control. Although there was still some pain in his mouth, it was already much better than before. Both of them were instantly more convinced of Chu Yang's methods. They pulled Chu Yang's hand even more affectionately. What's the matter? After thinking for a while, I think it's better to explain it. I feel uneasy if I keep it in my heart. Everyone can tell that I haven't exploded in the past few days. In fact, I'll confess to everyone that I've received a notice the day before yesterday that this month's issue will be proudly promoted. As we all know, it's customary for a promotion to be promoted. So I've been in a hurry these few days. I write 3 chapters a day. Except for yesterday, when I was sorting out the outline, I didn't write any more. I write 2 chapters and save 1 chapter. Waiting for the promotion to be promoted. Well, I've saved 2 chapters so far. I'll try to write 1 more chapter today. I believe that everyone will be very satisfied when the issue is released. If I don't say it, I'll directly explode in the future. Perhaps I'll get more votes. But I feel uneasy, as if I've been cheated. Everyone has followed me for so long. If I play such petty tricks, it seems that I'm letting everyone down. I might as well make it clear in advance. I hope that everyone can understand me, and I hope to get everyone's support when the time comes. Those who haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Those who can't subscribe, please click on the issue and give a few recommendation votes and comments. Thank you in advance. Chapter 771. Finally, Chu Yang finished treating the 2 of them. He was exhausted and sweating profusely. He sat down on the ground and panted. His face was pale. Seeing that he was so tired for them, the 2 of them felt even more apologetic. This little brother is really an honest person. Chu Yang rolled his eyelids weakly and said, Brothers, cough, cough, cough. I have something to remind you. Don't blame me for speaking too much. The 2 of them said in unison. Little brother, just say what you want to say. There's no need to be so polite between us. Chu Yang panted and said, These 2 prescriptions must not fall into the hands of that quack. Otherwise, brothers, I'm too worried. People in the martial world are unpredictable. Cough, cough, cough. Sha Xinliang and Qin Baoshan nodded at the same time. Little brother, even if you don't say it, we also know the pros and cons. How can we let others know about this? Not to mention that bastard already has ulterior motives. Besides, we have many enemies in the martial world. If they know that we're seriously injured, they'll flock to us. It'll be very bad. Chu Yang nodded and coughed continuously. He seemed to be so tired that he couldn't breathe. Sha Xinliang and Qin Baoshan each took one side and helped him to massage his back considerately. They used just the right amount of strength. After you've gathered all the herbs, hand them to me immediately, or call me here. I'll use my secret technique to refine medicine. Chu Yang's breathing became smoother. Take note that these herbs must be well preserved. It's best if they're freshly picked herbs with the best efficacy. Of course, once we've gathered all the herbs, we'll hand them to you immediately. The 2 of them vowed. No need. There are many people in the Chu clan. It's not good to reveal your secret. After all, after taking the medicine, you'll still be in a weak state for a period of time. As long as the tear stain water seal is here, I'll bring the medicine furnace here and refine the medicine on the spot. Chu Yang was extremely considerate. He revealed all the dangers to them and avoided them. At that time, I'll stay close to you until you recover. Only then will I be at ease. The two of them held Chu Yang's hands at the same time and shook them vigorously. They felt so sad that their eyes were filled with tears. They didn't know what to say. This was the problem that the two of them were most worried about. But Chu Yang had already solved it for them. What a good person. Sha Xinliang suddenly felt ashamed. He thought to himself, I'm really not a human. Just now, I even wanted to kill such a good little brother and take back the 300 purple crystals. Alas, compared to his open and above-board heart, I'm really worse than a beast. Then, Chu Yang began to pant and rest. At the same time, his eyes flickered a little. It seemed that he had something to say, but couldn't say it. His expression was a little hesitant and startled. How experienced were Sha Xinliang and Qin Baoshan? How could they not see Chu Yang's abnormality? Although the two of them were in a hurry to find the medicine, they still felt uneasy when they saw Chu Ji's expression. At the same time they asked, Little brother, you seem to be worried about something? Yes, I am indeed worried. Chu Yang seemed to be in a trance. So he blurted out this sentence. Then he suddenly realized something. No, I'm not worried. Haha, I'm not worried at all. Haha. His smile was extremely forced, and anyone could tell that he was panicking, or perhaps extremely terrified and full of misgivings. The two of them felt very strange. They frowned and pretended to be angry. Little brother, since we call each other brothers, could it be that you're hiding something from us? If that's the case, how sad and disappointed would we be? But this is only my conjecture. The watermark of setting sail isn't accurate, and it's a matter of great importance. It's related to the Hall of Justice. Nothing. I don't dare to say. Chu Yang said aggrievedly. A matter of great importance? It's related to the Hall of Justice. The two of them looked solemn at the same time and said, Little brother, it's okay to say it. Even if it's wrong, it's okay. Only the heavens, the earth, you and I know this place. There's no fourth person here. Chu Yang was conflicted, struggling and hesitating. Finally he said, This is what the two of you said to me. It's not what I want to say. If I have to bear any responsibility in the future, I can't bear it. That's for sure. The two of them also realized that it was probably really a matter of great importance. They couldn't help but raise their spirits. Since that's the case, I'll be frank. Actually, I'm very curious. Chu Yang frowned. Don't you two find it strange? You're the Hall of Justice. What kind of people are the Hall of Justice? What kind of organization is the Hall of Justice? How did this happen? This kind of quack doctor who specializes in harming people. No, calling him a quack doctor is too unfair. He's really a top-notch doctor. Because this brother harms people silently. He's doing it flawlessly. If I didn't have that fortuitous encounter, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to do anything. Chu Yang shook his head repeatedly. How can there be such a doctor in the Hall of Justice? The two of them looked solemn. They couldn't help but look at each other. They saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. Chu Yang said, As everyone knows, the Hall of Justice is in charge of the Hall of Justice in the heaven-level continent. That is to say, the Hall of Justice has the greatest authority. It's even higher than the big dominating clans. And there are no authorities here. Even if there were, they would be helpless against immortal-like people like the Dharma Enforcers. But there are still people who can disintegrate the Dharma Enforcers. And that is the doctor. Chu Yang said heavily. This is just my speculation. A doctor's killing is even more difficult to guard against than a professional executioner. Moreover, he can delay the recovery of your injuries until you don't suspect him at all. Until now. If there's really some rebels, during a large-scale battle, the Hall of Justice collectively fell ill. Chu Yang said sincerely. I won't hide it from you two old brothers. I have this kind of ability. Moreover, so I'm worried that even if you two old brothers are cured, your life in Jianghu is full of dangers at every step. How can you not look for a doctor? The two's faces suddenly became as black as the bottom of a pot. Both of them had been suspicious about this matter. Now that Chu Yang had pointed it out clearly, the more they thought about it, the more scared they became. Qin Baoshan twisted his beard and frowned. Is there a conspiracy? Or is it an organization that's attacking us, Hall of Justice? Xia Xinliang shuddered and thought of something. His face suddenly became as white as a sheet of paper. His lips trembled, and his eyes stared blankly. He said, I remember. So it's like this, Qin Baoshan asked. What did you remember? Xia Xinliang's lips trembled. This Tong Wuxin was originally a doctor consecrated by the Shi clan. Last time when our doctor died suddenly, and we couldn't find a suitable candidate, the Shi clan recommended him to the Hall of Justice. It's been so many years, a total of 13 years. If it's really like this, then this matter is serious. Xia Xinliang shuddered all over. Chu Yang's heart thumped and almost jumped out in an instant. Hypocrite. This is a huge gain. I originally wanted to sow discord among the quack doctors to increase my own status and get myself a stable source of income. But I didn't expect that one of the big clans, the Shi clan, was involved in this matter. This doctor was actually sent by the Shi clan. Since this is the case, I might as well detonate the heavens directly from here. In these 13 years, are there many casualties among the Hall of Justice? Chu Yang turned his eyes and frowned. He kindly reminded Xia Xinliang. This sentence was really nonsense. The Hall of Justice was in charge of everything in the heavens. Things happened almost all the time. How could there not be many casualties? Sure enough, casualties? Big. Why not? Extremely big. There are too many people who died for no reason. Xia Xinliang stared and cold sweat trickled down from his forehead. Right now, he was sweating a lot more than before. No wonder. I didn't kill him. What a despicable plan. Suddenly, he felt that the casualties among the Hall of Justice were all because of this quack doctor. The two looked at each other with lingering fear. Damn it. We didn't die because of this insidious bastard after so many years. We're really lucky. If this is really the case, could it be a conspiracy of the Shi clan? Qin Baoshan frowned and pondered deeply. The Shi clan definitely has something to do with this. Xia Xinliang said fiercely. But this matter can't be said casually. You and I can't afford to be implicated in this matter. We can only report to the Chief Hall of Justice as soon as possible. Let him decide. Qin Baoshan said. It's just that Tong Wuxin has become familiar with us after so many years. He calls everyone his brother. If you and I rashly, no one will believe us. And I'm afraid we'll be harmed instead. Xia Xinliang paced back and forth with a heavy heart. That's right. This matter is of great importance. How can the #1 doctor in the southeast region be convicted just because of our words? Qin Baoshan also frowned. But if we keep this person, the longer we keep him, the greater the danger will be. Xia Xinliang pondered deeply. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he said, Little brother, can you do me a favor after some time? Fearing that Chu Yang would refuse, Xia Xinliang said fervently. As long as little brother agrees, I can guarantee that the Chu clan and little brother will be here forever. There'll be no changes, and the entire flat mountain ridge will belong to the Chu clan. Chu Yang said cautiously, What favor? Brother Xia. I'm just worried about the safety of my 2 brothers. That's why I'm talking nonsense. I'm already very satisfied that my 2 brothers are magnanimous and don't blame me. Besides, you should also know that I shouldn't say or hear what I've said just now. To me, this is equivalent to the collapse of the sky. I'm afraid. I don't want you to be in any danger. Xia Xinliang's eyes were sincere and urgent. He pleaded, When the Chief Hall of Justice of the Southeast region comes over, little brother, can you take a look at his body? Qin Baoshan cheered loudly. Great plan. Sure you didn't sleep. When he was writing, he would think about the plot and list the plots that he was going to write. This list was not important, but it actually went from 1 to 53. I'm buying cakes. That is to say, I have to write 53 plots in a short period of time and push forward gradually. Thinking about it gave me a headache. Chapter 772. Chapter 47. The Triumphant Returns Deception. Xia Xinliang and Qin Baoshan both knew that 12 years ago, the law enforcement master went through a lot of hardships to hunt down a Marshall Saint bandit. Although he killed the bandit in the end, he was also badly injured and almost died. It was Tong Wuxin who healed his injuries. This was also the reason why the law enforcement master protected Tong Wuxin and valued him so much. But if Tong Wuxin really had other plans, he wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. So as long as Chu Yang investigated and found out something, this Tong Wuxin's good days would really come to an end. And the lively days of the Shi clan would also come. It was imaginable that if the law enforcement master knew that he had been fooled by the Shi clan and Tong Wuxin for 13 years, with his temper and cultivation, how big of a mess would there be? Furthermore, if this matter were to be reported by the law enforcement master, then this would be a matter of life and death for the entire law enforcement organization. Not to mention other matters. Other than taking revenge on the Shi clan, all the internal doctors of the law enforcement organization might be investigated. By then, the entire law enforcement organization would be in chaos. It was imaginable that the entire martial world would be in a bloodbath. I understand what you mean, elder brother Sha. Chu Yang also became serious. He solemnly and powerfully said, I don't dare to make any guarantees, but I assure you that I'll do my best. I'll do my best to sow discord in the world. It's best to involve all the big clans. We'll fight to the death. It's best if all of them die. Good brothers. Both of them were so touched that their eyes were brimming with tears. Both of them let go of their worries. If the law enforcement master was fine, they would at most not look for Tong Wuxin to treat their injuries. But if something happened to the law enforcement master, this would be a great contribution. Once something happened, this matter would definitely be a super conspiracy. Everything was ready, and the only thing they lacked was confirmation. And looking at Chu Yang's current means, such peerless medical skills would definitely be able to tell. Once this matter was confirmed, and this matter was discovered by both of them, how could this great contribution run away? His promotion was a matter that was set in stone. The reward was also obvious, and it would be a heavy one. Furthermore, there was another point. Because of this matter, as long as there was a storm, the doctors within the law enforcement officers would definitely be replaced. This brother Chu was young and had a clear background. Furthermore, the Chu clan was not very powerful and was easy to control. His medical skills were outstanding, and he was the one who uncovered the conspiracy. Therefore, it was unquestionable that Brother Chu would be valued by the law enforcement officers. In fact, it was not impossible for him to be the chief physician. When the time came, the three brothers would be as one. Wouldn't that mean that there would be someone on the outside, someone on the inside, someone in the medical field, and someone in the martial arts field? They would simply be the golden partners. At that time, the three of them would rise to the top together. Wahahaha. The two of them looked forward to a bright future. Golden light flashed before their eyes. It was as if a path completely paved with purple crystals had been laid out in front of him. While the two of them were daydreaming, Divine Dr. Chu was also daydreaming. Chu Yang's harvest this time was really too big. Too big, too big. Firstly, he had freed himself from suspicion. He had gone from being the most serious suspect to being completely innocent. Secondly, he had gained two powerful backers for himself. Thirdly, he had collected the medicine that he needed to recover his martial arts. Although he had not gotten it yet, Chu Yang was sure that it would be done very soon. Fourthly, he had obtained 2 of the 8 medicinal herbs that Chu Luo needed. This was a huge harvest. Fifthly, he had planted a bomb for the law enforcement officers. Actually, Chu Yang did not expect that Dr. Tong Wuxin was actually sent by the Shi clan, one of the dominant clans, to curry favor with the law enforcement officers. But now, Chu Yang had turned this bargaining chip into a bomb that was enough to turn the Shi clan upside down. Furthermore, he had faintly paved another path for himself in the future. When the time came, as long as there was chaos, he would be able to attack or retreat. He would definitely be highly sought after by the law enforcement officers. And at that time, there would definitely be a lot of injured people, and he would be able to make a fortune. If there was really no other way, he could become the chief physician within the law enforcement officers. This was also something that he could consider. As for the internal problems of the Chu clan, humph, Chu Feilong, I'll immediately let you see how powerful these two new brothers of mine are. He. Minister Chu's heart was filled with joy. Under Sha Xinliang's and Qin Baoshan's endless gratitude, Chu Yang still pretended to be worried at heart, and repeatedly said, "Take care of yourselves." This moved the two brothers so much that their eyes glistened with tears. Before they left, Sha Xinliang took out a large plate of 200 purple crystals, and Qin Baoshan also took out a bag, which contained a total of 200 purple crystals. He had to give them to Chu Yang. Chu Yang desperately refused to accept them, and said sternly, "I know that the two brothers are doing this for my own good. And the two brothers also know that my martial arts have been destroyed, and I need the spiritual energy of the heaven and earth from the purple crystals to break through my meridians and recover my martial arts. Otherwise, I would not have extorted 300 purple crystals from the two law enforcement officers. To be honest, I'm very greedy for money, but the two brothers have treated me wholeheartedly and did not look down on me because of my lowly status. Instead, you treat me as equals. I'm already sincerely grateful. But how can I treat you wholeheartedly for the sake of purple crystals? The two brothers are looking down on me too much," he said righteously. "Although I lack purple crystals to the point of no return, I am still a human being if I still charge fees for treating your two elder brothers' illnesses." In the space of tribulation, the sword spirit was already twitching all over. "You fucker, to think that you can say that. You're saying that you're short of purple crystals, and you're greedy for money, but you still insist on refusing. You're just digging a hole for yourself. Even if you don't want them, they'll still insist on giving them to you. If they don't give them to you, they'll feel guilty." Indeed, Sha Xinliang was displeased and said, "Little brother, you're wrong. Do you think that our purple crystals are the medical fees for you to treat your illness? We're not afraid of being laughed at by you, but the two of us are respectable people. Do we still need to spend money for treating your illness? Besides, even if you're a high priest of the Medicine Valley, it's not worth 200 purple crystals for treating your illness. We're giving these to our little brother, and it has nothing to do with treating your illness." He actually said angrily, "No matter if you're a divine doctor or a quack, since the two of us have taken a fancy to you, we'll definitely give you purple crystals. Little brother, do you understand?" Chu Yang said, "Elder brother, your words make me ashamed to death. The more it's like this, the more I can't accept them. Not only that, if I have more purple crystals in the future, I'll definitely be filial to you two elder brothers. As a younger brother, how can I take things from my elder brothers?" Qin Baoshan was displeased. He pretended to be angry and glared at Chu Yang. "Little brother, you're wrong. As a younger brother, if you don't take things from your elder brothers, how can you take things from other places? Besides, little brother, if you insist on not accepting them, are you looking down on the two of us?" Chu Yang was stunned. "Elder brother, don't misunderstand. I don't mean it like that. If you don't mean it like that, then accept them." Sha Xinliang roared and glared at Chu Yang. "I thought that you're looking down on us because we're old." Chu Yang's face was full of sweat, and he stuttered, This is simply a joke. I really, alas, since this is the case, I'll accept them shamelessly. Alas, what do you think this is?" Divine Dr. Chu looked melancholy. "That's more like it." The two old men put the two bags of purple crystals in Chu Yang's arms and smiled contentedly, like two blooming chrysanthemums. "I'll keep them first. When the two elder brothers need them, I'll immediately send them back." Chu Yang said sadly, "Elder brothers, don't be in a hurry to reject them. It's also good to let me enjoy them. My heart will also feel more at ease." Sha Xinliang and Qin Baoshan were greatly moved. "Little brother is really a kind person," they said. "All right, we'll let you keep them for the time being." The two looked at each other and smiled. They thought, "We'll never borrow money from little brother. Hee, we've already given them to you." Chu Yang nodded guiltily and sighed. Then, he cupped his hands, bowed deeply and bade farewell. His face was full of hesitation, as if he had received a big gift from the two elder brothers. The young man felt very upset. It's inconvenient for little brother to carry so many purple crystals by himself. Guards! Sha Xinliang shouted. Use my special carriage. It's clean inside, and send my little brother back to the Chu clan. 4 iron plate martial artists and 2 silver plate martial artists will escort him. If anything happens to my little brother, you don't have to come back. Chu Yang bowed and bade farewell. He said sincerely, Elder brothers, you have to hurry up with the medicine. I'll wait for your good news. The two nodded repeatedly. When Divine Dr. Chu sat in the carriage, the side of the carriage began to sway silently, and it went all the way out of the law enforcement hall. Looking at the trembling carriage, the coachman felt strange. There's only one person inside. Why is the carriage shaking? But he didn't know that Divine Dr. Chu was laughing silently in the carriage with his mouth wide open. His eyebrows danced in exultation, and he rolled back and forth, venting his excitement. Divine Dr. Chu returned with a fruitful journey, escorted by attendants. This law enforcement officer used the special carriage of Sha Xinliang, the leader of the law enforcement hall, to escort him. Even the masters of the Chu clan, Bao clan and Liao clan had never enjoyed such an exceptional treatment. This visit was actually more fruitful than the one that he had spent the whole night on that day. A total of 700 purple crystals were right in his arms. Making money requires wisdom, Minister Chu thought. Divine Dr. Chu reclined in the spacious carriage and crossed his legs proudly. With a flip of his hand, all the purple crystals disappeared without a trace. These are all mine, 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 mine. Second update for today. Tomorrow's update will start from the early morning. Brothers and sisters who are still online at that time, please give me a few recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 773. This time, Chu Yang had made a fortune. In addition to the 300 purple crystals that Chu Yang had extorted from Qin Baoshan, Chu Yang now had a total of 1,000 purple crystals in his space. And there were 200 pieces that had been cut open. This was Divine Dr. Chu's private property. In addition to the 400 purple crystals that Chu Fian had used to issue missions, there were close to 1,700 purple crystals. And these were only the income of Divine Dr. Chu in the past 5 days, since he opened his medical center. And in these 5 days, there were 3.5 days where he didn't go to work. Such speed was simply the world's #1 money-making master. As for the whereabouts of these purple crystals, return them to the clan? Making a ruckus was definitely not a viable option. How could a rabbit grow wings and fly away? Could a rabbit grow wings? Obviously it couldn't. So Divine Dr. Chu had to fill his own pockets. And Sha Xinliang and Qin Baoshan had already started to get busy after Chu Yang went out. How could they not be busy? This involved the lives of 2 people. After handing over the task of collecting medicinal herbs to their subordinates, the 2 of them heaved a sigh of relief. Of course, the 2 of them weren't completely brainless. They messed up the list of medicinal herbs that they needed, and let their subordinates search for them with 1 or 2 medicinal herbs. Of course, they first extorted as much as they could from the nearest few big clans. Those that couldn't be extorted were the things that required more effort. After they were busy with their own interests, the 2 of them finally wrote a letter. They didn't say clearly in the letter, but only said that a major matter had happened in the flat mountain ridge, and they earnestly requested for Lord Fa to come and deal with it personally. It was a big conspiracy that concerned the life and death of their subordinates, and could even cause the heavenly layer to be overturned. The details couldn't be explained in the letter. In short, he made it sound as serious as it could possibly be, adding 2 pounds of weight. In short, they thought, if Lord Fa doesn't come, it'll be really terrible this time. Maybe even the Dharma Supreme won't be able to see the sun next year. Then, they passed the message out. Of course, the only thing left was to wait. Sha Xinliang and Qin Baoshan were very excited. Chu Yang didn't know about all these, and he didn't care. He was now sitting in a luxurious carriage, crossing his legs and humming a tune. He walked step by step towards the Chu clan that was dozens of miles away. He even had time to take a nap in the carriage. He had no idea that the Chu clan was in a complete mess right now. 2 flowers bloomed, 1 on each side. Not even 4 hours had passed since Chu Yang had been taken away. Suddenly, The sound of horse hooves could be heard on the main road of the flat mountain ridge. The sound of horse hooves was extremely loud. It was enough to show that the riders on the horses were burning with anxiety. The people on the streets of Wuxia town craned their necks to look at each other. Just as they raised their heads, the sound of horse hooves approached them. A large group of warriors draped in bright red cloaks. Every one of them looked ferocious and murderous. There were a total of 200 of them. Their blood-red cloaks fluttered in the wind as they ran. Like a blood cloud, they rushed into Wuxia town in the flat mountain ridge with a loud boom. Then he galloped on the wide street, heading straight for the Chu family. This group of people had no scruples at all. They were simply charging forward without any restraint. Along the way, they overturned the Bao family's grain store and kicked away the Liao family's signboard. A few people who had just come out wanted to argue with them. However, when they saw this group of blood-red figures, they shrank back inside. The two people leading this group of blood-red cavalry were dressed in white robes that were not tainted by a speck of dust. The person in the lead had a beard that was almost the same color as his cloak. He was an old man with a square face and a wide mouth. He had a lion's nose and tiger's eyes. He had a strong back and a bear's waist. His eyes seemed to have an aura of disdain for the world. At this moment, his face was filled with excitement and anxiety. He beat his horse crazily. Giddy up! Giddy up! Giddy up! The person in white beside him was a man in his prime. Judging from his face, he seemed to be a father. However, this man looked to be in his 40s. His face was full of curly hair that almost covered his eyes. His body was especially huge. He was even more muscular than his father. Riding on the horse, he looked like a black iron tower. Fortunately, this horse was a 1 in a million dragon steed. If it was an ordinary war horse, it would have collapsed on the spot. There were actually 3 large carriages in the group. The group was galloping like thunder. However, the carriages were extremely stable and did not shake much. It could be seen that the coachman's driving skills had already reached the peak. There were also a few fierce-looking blood-red cavalry beside the carriages. As long as there was a ravine, a few of them would reach out their hands, and the carriages would soar into the air. Even the horses would fly over the ravine steadily. Then, they would land on the ground and continue galloping without stopping. This kind of cooperation really made people gasp in amazement. Wherever the carriages passed, a fragrant wind would float out. It could be seen that the people in the carriages were women. The old man in the lead had a heroic air about him. He looked around and laughed loudly. "Little bear, tell me, this old man has come with enough face this time. What do you think? Maybe he can let my poor nephew hold his head high in his house?" Well, the big man next to him, who was as strong as a bear, was actually called Little Bear. This name was really worthy of the name. However, it was more or less a little too useful. That big man laughed like thunder. "Of course." Then he lowered his voice. "Father, in front of so many people, can you not call me Little Bear?" The old man suddenly became angry. The horse galloped wildly and glared at him. "Your mother's fart. If I don't call you Little Bear, should I call you Father? Little Bear is Little Bear." The big man shrank his neck and stopped talking. However, someone in the carriage could not stand it. An old woman's voice scolded in dissatisfaction. "Old bastard! If you want to discipline your son, then discipline him. How can you make him fart? What the hell did he do to you?" A gentle voice persuaded. "Granny, don't be angry. Father has such a violent temper." "He has such a violent temper?" The old woman in the carriage snorted and said, "Why is he so violent? He doesn't dare to be violent after being scolded by me? Old bastard who bullies the weak and fears the strong." The old man at the front of the troop did not dare to be violent anymore. He just kept shouting, "Giddy up, giddy up, giddy up. Giddy up, giddy up, giddy up. You bastards, why are you so slow? Hurry up for old Wu. Faster. Faster. Motherfucker, motherfucker, motherfucker." Instead, he vented all his anger on others. Therefore, the blood-red clothes troop was like a gust of wind, sweeping past. The troop of horses galloped with a power that could split heaven and earth, leaving behind a trail of smoke and dust that went straight to the sky. It filled the entire sky of Wuxia town. A person by the roadside looked at the troop of horses that were far away and said, "What an elite troop. Where are these crazy people from? So arrogant? A well-informed man next to him sneered and said, You don't even know this? You're really ignorant. This is the Yang family's blood-red clothes troop of Aspen Valley. It's the world's top elite force. Do you see it? The old man in the lead is the head of the Yang family, Yang Bao. The man behind him is Yang Bao's son, Yang Ruoxiong. He's also the commander of the blood-red clothes troop. So they're from the Yang family. No wonder they're so powerful. The man from before stuck out his tongue. When they were about 3 to 4 miles away from the Chu family, Master Yang Bao suddenly roared, Old bastard Chu Xiongqing, come out and welcome your in-laws. What are you waiting for? His voice was like thunder, spreading out in all directions in an instant, echoing between heaven and earth. Old bastard, live, 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 live. Everyone who heard it laughed in their hearts. If your in-laws are old bastards, then what are you? In the Chu family, Master Chu, who was frowning, was so angry when he heard this thunderous roar. This old hooligan is here again, and this bastard is still the same as before. He purposely added the echo sound technique to the words old bastard, making these words float in the air and echo for 3 days. I've never seen such a boorish person. Motherfucker, it's really bad luck to have such a relative. Master Chu was furious and roared. I was wondering who's coming. So it's old Yang, you old bastard. As he spoke, he ordered, Go and invite first young master, first young mistress, and all the relatives of the Chu family to welcome them at the gate. As he spoke, he hurriedly walked out. Master Chu knew very well that his in-laws had a bad temper. If he didn't hurry out, he was afraid that this old bastard would really rush into the Chu family's gate. As he walked, he cursed. After 5 steps, he suddenly let out an ah, and was stunned on the spot. Yang Bao, this old hooligan, definitely came here today to see his grandson. This old bastard must have received the news sent by his men, and couldn't wait to see his grandson. So he came here directly. In these 18 years, the number of times Yang Bao came here could be counted. Every time he came, it was because of his grandson's disappearance. He would scold Master Chu, and then the two of them would fight for a while. After that, Master Chu would return to his room to heal his wounds, while Yang Bao would return with a bruised nose and a swollen face. This old bastard didn't even think about it. You're heartbroken because you lost your grandson. But do you think I'm not heartbroken because I lost my biological grandson? This time he had found him. Yang Bao had definitely come in high spirits. Moreover, judging from the time, this old man had definitely rushed over after receiving the news. It was easy to imagine how excited Master Yang's heart was. This might be the only time the two of them didn't fight since they met. But where's my grandson? Where's my grandson? He was taken away by the Hall of Justice. Oh my God. Why did such an old bastard come out to mess things up at such a critical juncture? How am I supposed to deal with this? Master Chu was like an ant on a hot pan. This time was different from the past. If they couldn't find him in the past, then so be it. Everyone knew that there was nothing they could do about it. But this time he finally came back. But at this critical juncture, he was taken away by the Hall of Justice. The side that was in the wrong was all on his side. Yang Bao originally came here in high spirits. If Master Chu were to throw cold water on him, with this old bastard's temper, it would be strange if he didn't tear down the Chu clan alive. Old Master Chu sighed, but he didn't dare to delay. He hurriedly walked towards the door. Halfway through, Chu Feilong hurriedly came to report. Old Master Yang, together with Yang Ruoxiong, the ladies of the Yang clan, including Old Lady Yang, and 200 members of the blood-clothed troop, had come to visit. Master Chu's face turned pale on the spot. Chapter 774. Old Master Chu Xiongqing wanted to find a hole to hide in. That old woman was even scarier than Yang Bao. Back then, he and Yang Bao were rivals in love. At that time, they were almost irreconcilable. But fortunately, he lost in the competition for love in the end. Otherwise, if he really married her, it would be even more difficult for him to live. Ever since that old bastard Yang Bao found a wife, his leg skills had become even more powerful. That was trained by kneeling on an iron abacus. Who would have thought that the delicate little beauty back then would be so valiant after marrying someone else? Ever since old Master Chu heard that Yang Bao did not lead a good life after marriage, and was repeatedly abused, he was so excited that he got drunk for a few days. Every day he would say, "That was close. Luckily, I managed to escape." Hearing about that bastard Yang Bao's experience really made me feel good. But now, the two of them came together. Old Master Chu wanted to run away in an instant. But it was too late. He was already surrounded by his son and family members, and walked towards the door. Along the way, old Master Chu's eyes darted around. He wanted to find a place to fool them, but before he could think of a reason, they had already reached the door. With a loud rumble, the Yang family's horse team rushed over from a distance of a stone's throw away. That rapid speed was about to trample the Chu family to the ground. But when they were 10 feet away from the door, old Master Yang Bao shouted, "Stop!" All of the horses stood up at the same time. With a long neigh, they actually stopped in an orderly manner with a bang. A cloud of dust, like a tornado in the desert, poured into the Chu clan's main gate with a bang. None of the people who came out to greet the guests were an exception. They were all covered in dust from head to toe. Their shiny long robes suddenly turned into the attire of refugees. Their faces were covered in dust, and everyone had sand in their mouths. They stared angrily at the evil guests in front of them. Old Master Chu was caught off guard. He swallowed a mouthful of dust and was furious. "Yang Bao, don't think that I'm afraid of you. How dare you behave so atrociously in front of my Chu family?" Old Master Yang Bao's snow-white beard straightened. He was overjoyed. "Wahahaha, old bastard Chu, I haven't seen you for so many years. You're still alive," Chu Xiongqing said angrily. "Even if you do, I don't know how to do that." A voice in the carriage snorted and said, "Chu Xiongqing, are you cursing me to be a widow?" Chu Xiongqing was stunned and his face was full of sweat. You're here too?" Master Yang Bao looked at Chu Xiongqing with a victorious look. He laughed happily and said, "Chu Xiongqing, you didn't expect my wife to be here, did you?" Old Master Chu's chest felt stifled as he retorted sarcastically, "All these years, how many iron abacuses have been ruined?" "Kneel on your balls." Yang Bao was hit where it hurt. He was instantly enraged, and was about to flare up. At this moment, Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolin rushed over. Yang Ruolin shouted from afar, "Father, mother, why didn't you tell us in advance that you were coming?" "I didn't tell you in advance just to give you a surprise." Yang Bao shook his head. "Now that I've found my grandson, I won't be angry with all of you. Chu Xiongqing, if you don't let the guests in, what are you waiting for?" Old Master Chu snorted resentfully. He stepped aside and said, Please come in." Yang Bao jumped down from the horse and laughed out loud. He strode through the door and asked with a loud voice, "Where is my grandson? Why didn't you let him come out to greet his grandfather?" "Wahahaha, I haven't seen that little thing for 18 years. It was only a foot long then, but now it's a foot long." Chu Xiongqing's face was instantly filled with yellow veins. Under the escort of the Chu clan's people, the Yang clan's people were finally welcomed in. Someone went to greet the 200 blood-clothed troops, and the important people came to the Chu clan's meeting hall. The important relatives came. Old Master Chu, Chu Feiling and his wife, Chu Feilong and his wife, the few grandchildren of the Chu clan, Duan Shui and her children, and Chu Fian's wife and her children were all present. Chu Fian was helping Divine Dr. Chu to look after the shop, so he naturally wasn't present. As for the Yang clan, Old Master Yang Bao and his wife, Yang Ruoxiong and his wife were present. Besides, there were two young men who looked like Yang Ruoxiong. They were tall and strong, but lacked the beard. Besides, there was also a young girl in red clothes with bright eyes and white teeth. She was Yang Ruoxiong's daughter, and Chu Yang's cousin. Chu Feiling sat on his seat obediently. Every time he saw the appearance of his father-in-law and uncle, Chu Feiling couldn't help but be speechless. He even had to thank the gods in his heart. Fortunately, Ruolin doesn't look like her father and brother. Otherwise, how can I live on? The housekeeper asked someone to serve tea, and the whole hall was filled with the fragrance of tea. Chu Feiling's eldest uncle, Yang Ruoxiong, sat down on a chair in the hall. Everyone heard a creaking sound from the chair. The chair almost fell apart when this burly man sat on it. Picking up the teacup, he didn't care if it was hot or not. Gulping, he drank the entire cup of tea along with the tea. After chewing and swallowing, he said, "Bah, this isn't good tea. It's so bitter." The young girl in red was at a loss. "Father, don't speak if you don't understand. Even the tea is bitter." Yang Ruoxiong opened his mouth. "Good girl, how can I not know that tea is bitter?" Chu Failing rolled his eyes and thought, "Why did you say that when you know? I finally understand now. Today, I asked you to come here purely to play the fool and see what you're up to." Master Yang Bao parted his mustache and poured the tea into his mouth. Then he slowly put down the teacup and said, "Chu Xiongqing, is this your welcoming lineup?" Master Chu had ulterior motives. He smiled and said, "In-law, have some tea first." "Why are you drinking tea?" Yang Bao stood up. "I've seen these people before, but my grandson hasn't. But there's no one here." He laughed weirdly. "Why? Do you want to give me a surprise? He's not a treasure. Hurry up and ask him to come out. I want to see how he's grown after being outside for 18.5 years. Chu Xiongqing's face twitched. He forced a smile and said in a low voice, "This? Yang isn't at home now. He might be at the clinic." "Then why aren't you calling him?" Yang Bao stared. Chu Xiongqing looked at old Mistress Yang for help. "In-law." Old Mistress Yang looked very blessed. She had a kind face and white hair. She was still beautiful between her eyebrows. One could still vaguely see the supreme elegance she had when she was young. She looked at Chu Xiongqing and sighed. "Xiongqing, we haven't seen each other for many years." Chu Xiongqing was stunned and sighed. "Yes." He recalled the memories of his youth. "Where are my two younger sisters?" Old Mistress Yang sighed and asked, "Why don't I see them?" Master Chu sighed and pointed to the ground under his feet. He said sadly, "They've already gone down." "Sai, you've been alone for so many years?" Old Mistress Yang said sympathetically, "You've had it tough. A young couple will accompany each other in old age." Master Chu looked up and sighed. "It's a long story." He thought to himself, "Even if I'm an old bachelor, it's still much easier than marrying you back then. Otherwise, I'd be the one using the iron abacus to practice the iron knee divine technique. I'm better than Yang Bao in that I know how to protect myself." But of course, he didn't dare to say this out. Master Yang Bao looked at this and that. He opened his mouth and swallowed his words. Then, he opened his mouth again, and felt a sense of jealousy rising from his heart. He roared, "Let's talk about serious matters. Let's talk about serious matters." As he said, he muttered, "Damn it, I didn't ask you to come here for a blind date. I'm a little worried." "What did you say? What do you mean by a little worried?" Old Mistress Yang slammed her walking stick on the ground. With a loud bang, 5 of the bluestone tiles in the Chu residence cracked. She stared at her husband angrily. Master Chu looked at the cracked tiles. The corner of his mouth twitched and twitched again. "I didn't say anything." Master Yang tilted his head and stiffened his neck. "How dare you? You still dare to talk back to me?" Old Mistress Yang's roar was like a lion roaring from the east. Master Chu Xiongqing covered his ears and moaned, "Oh my God!" Luckily, Yang Bao was angry, but he didn't dare to say anything. He glared at them for a long time before he finally admitted defeat. Like a defeated rooster, he said, "I saw the two of you exchanging glances with each other. You seem to have the intention of rekindling old feelings. This old man had to be on guard. If someone were to steal her away at such an old age, it wouldn't look good. Seduce your grandma." Old Mistress Yang was furious. She smacked him with her walking stick. Master Yang didn't dodge. With a bang, the crutch smashed into his back, producing a metallic sound. After a muffled groan, he actually acted as if nothing had happened. Chu Xiongqing's mouth twitched. He thought to himself, looking at this situation, not only does he have to practice the iron knee divine technique, he also has to practice the iron back divine technique. This Yang Bao seems to have practiced it to the peak. I wonder how many beatings he has to take to reach this level. When he thought of this, he felt refreshed. Yang Ruolin hurriedly went forward to persuade her mother. "Mother, we're in public, and we're here. Can't you leave father some face?" Old Mistress Yang said angrily. "Am I not leaving him any face?" Look at your father, this old bastard. What kind of green turtle is he talking about? Master Yongbao snorted softly. If I become a green turtle, I can't blame anyone else. He said this sentence very softly. Old Mistress Yang didn't hear it clearly. She shouted, "What did you say? Say it again." Master Yongbao stroked his long beard and pretended to be sage-like. He looked down and didn't say anything. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.